To order. Clerk, please do a roll call.
Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Councilmember Gorola.
Here.
Councilmember West. Here. Councilmember Edberg.
Here.
Councilmember Engstrand.
Here.
And Mayor Nikolowski.
Here. Okay, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 2A, approval of the minutes of the strategic planning meeting on April 15th, 2026. I'd entertain a motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, it passes. Okay, item 2B, approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting on April 28th. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move approval of the minutes with one change. Changes on page 4, first paragraph at the top, and should read in the 5th line. Councilmember Edberg informed Ms. Lewis that challenging future state revenues may require the city to reduce future financial commitments to the Market Fest. With that, I would move approval.
Okay, all right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, item 3, the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. Item 4, the consent agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes. Yes. Yes, okay. 5A, Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Nikolowski. Just before you read the proclamation, it's National Public Works Week next week, and I want to just give a little background on National Public Works Week. So it recognizes the professionals who focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being in our White Bear Lake community. The city publicly recognizes its public works professionals for their service to the city of White Bear Lake and our great community. We will have a public works open house next week. I think it's at the end. I have a slide at the end, but now is a great time to talk about it. So everybody please come out to our 3rd annual Public Works open house down at our Public Works facility. And we have several Public Works employees here today just to hear the proclamation that the mayor will read. But personally, thank you to all of our Public Works staff. We really appreciate all that you do for us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank our Public Works Department for all their hard work last Saturday, or was it 2 Saturdays ago at our cleanup day. They worked tirelessly from 6:30 in the morning until probably well after I left at 1. So anyway, thanks you guys. They're great. Okay, so whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of White Bear Lake. And whereas these infrastructure, facility, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for citizens, civic leaders, and children in White Bear Lake to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public work programs and in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2026 marks the 66th annual National Public Works Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now therefore be it resolved that White Bear Lake City Council hereby designates the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2026 as Public Works Week in White Bear Lake, and urges citizens to join representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our health, safety, and advancing the quality of life for all. Thank you all. Do we want to give them an applause? Can you guys stand? Thank you. All right, item 5B, traffic signal replacement at Trunk Highway 61 and 2nd Street project introduction. Mr. Kaupe.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we have representatives from the Minnesota Department of Transportation. We'll go over the plans for the 2nd Street and Highway 61 signal replacement. We, the city, have two legs of that intersection, so when we get into these projects, we work with the MnDOT to do the design and coordination around those replacements, as we are responsible for two of those legs of that intersection. MnDOT having the other two being Highway 61, the City of White Bear Lake, 2nd Street. If you recall, this is the second one, and we have one also being constructed or reconstructed this summer. That one is the Highway 61, Lake Avenue, and County Road 96 will go in the summer of 2026 here. So this is the second one that we will have consecutively, partnering with MnDOT to get those projects done. So I wanted to bring this before council. There's some changes to the intersection with ped improvements, Burson Avenue. And I just wanted to introduce it to council before we bring up a future cooperative agreement and some right-of-way access agreement. So I'm going to call up John Chalk and Kent Bernard will do the speaking. Matthew Perrin is also here. He's our area engineer, kind of helps the projects in this area. So I'll call up John and Kent, and they can have a brief presentation for us.
Great, thank you. There we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Chalk. Like Paul said, I'm a design engineer with MnDOT and the project manager for this project. This occurs at two locations on 61, both 694 and 2nd Street. The main project that we're looking at here tonight is the intersection of 2nd Street. Like Paul alluded to, the main scope of work there is replacing the signal, and with that we have various ADA improvements, along with the closure of access to the intersection of Burson Street. The rest of the work down at 694 is a little more complex, and I'll kind of run through that, but we're replacing all the mainline pavement of 61, reconstructing the ramps, and also adding a second left turn lane for northbound Trunk Highway 61 to westbound 694. And again, here you can see 2nd Street a little more in depth from our layout. Like I said, we're replacing the aging signal system, doing ADA improvements, removing the Burson Avenue access at the intersection. This is just causing confusion with the natural progression of the intersection. You know, folks are used to 4 legs, and this kind of creates an unnatural 5th leg. And then the railroad will also be using this opportunity to update their signal system at the intersection, and we'll also be working with them to put in the concrete pads between their tracks that will then also go over the ADA segments. Kind of just a brief rundown of the staging plan at 2nd Street. We are going to be doing a full closure of 2nd Street to the intersection. This will just really compact our timeline of construction down to 4 to 6 weeks versus we were anticipating 3 to 4 months, just with having to do all the quadrants separately. A temporary signal will be provided still at the intersection so that we can maintain pedestrian crossings through the corridor. And you can kind of see that with the green line. It's going to run basically right through the center of the intersection. There'll be a temporary flasher and all that to stop traffic. And then there will also be potentially temporary lane closures that are needed for some of the ADA improvements as we redo the curb lines on 61 and at all the quadrant radii. Detour routes for 2nd Street while that is closed off. The west side is pretty straightforward. We're going to be utilizing 4th Street to Bald Eagle for both directions. The east side gets a little more complicated. There is a city project that we're aware of that's also going to be occurring in the summer of 2027. We're still, it sounds like that's still in progress, so we're waiting to hear the full details on that, and we'll just have to coordinate with the city of White Bear Lake to come up with the best routes for both projects to get folks to the east side. 694 is a little more complex. We'll be closing the north section of 694 in the ramps to and from, or we'll be closing the north section of 61 and the ramps to and from 694 from Berkeley down to just north of the eastbound 694 ramps for the first phase. And detours will utilize White Bear Avenue and County Road E. And on the west side, they'll utilize County Road E to 35E and back down to 694. Stage 2 will be a full closure of the southern portion of the project as well as the underbridge section and the ramps to and from eastbound 694. Detour routes will be fairly similar, where we'll rotate folks from Trunk Highway 36, I-35E, and then to County Road E, and then conversely, basically just a reverse of the northbound detour for that. And then I'll let Kent Barnard talk about our communications plan for the project.
Thank you, John. Good evening. We have already started some outreach to the businesses that are down on the south end, south of 694. I was really surprised when I was looking at the map to see how many car dealers there are between Highway 36 and up into White Bear Lake. So we did start with them because they're going to have a lot of impacts to traffic moving in and out of their places. We do plan to continue that outreach with the businesses up at 2nd Street, and that'll be probably later this summer, early fall. We'll also be going out and speaking to groups as they want us to come out and present this information. Project-specific website is being created, and we want to make sure that people sign up for our email updates because that's going to be a very important way for people to keep up with what's going on with this project, with the detours and the changing traffic patterns next year. Follow us on Facebook. Like us on Facebook, even if you really don't like us. I mean, we're used to it. You should also follow us on Twitter. We do use Twitter fairly regularly for short-term notices, and if something comes up and they decide they're going to close a ramp and they have to for emergency reasons or anything, we do send out things on I still call it Twitter, I'm sorry, X. We do tweet on X. And we will use that, like I said, for last-minute changes out there. Also, a very important website. I was involved when they first came out with 511, and it really was not very good, but over the years it has improved immensely. I keep track of what's going on there, and if I see a mistake, I am able to change the entries on there too. So follow 511, that'll let you know what's going on if there's a crash in the work zone or there's any sort of emergency repairs. And our 511 system works for the entire state, and Wisconsin has it, and I believe Illinois has it, and several area states do too. Our main website, MnDOT.gov, you can go there, you can get answers to almost any transportation question you have as long as it's state related. And, all of our various departments have websites too, like our traffic signals and our maintenance and our construction. So go ahead and go there, and then please get connected with us because we will be able to answer your questions, and you can reach out to me. My name is going to be on that website, and I'm more than happy to answer questions or answer emails, whatever you might have. Does anybody have any questions for John or me?
Yes, I have a question for John.
Go ahead.
Can you talk about the light cycle and what you're going to do with the light? Are you that far ahead on like the turn signal and?
That one I'll have to ask our signals group.
Okay.
I'm roadway design solely, so
Okay.
the signals designer would have more input on that. Are you looking for the temporary signal more so, or just the new signal timing?
No, the new signal.
Okay.
I'm just kind of wondering
If the left turn.
if the left,
Second is going to improve, I just sat there.
Sure.
For 4 minutes.
yeah, yes, yes.
Nope, I can relay that question and see what they have to say.
Intelligence or some plain old intelligence.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you can use some lived experience. It's actually faster to travel from 2nd Street up to 4th Street,
Yes.
wait at the
And
light,
come back.
take a left,
Yes.
come back all the way to City Hall than it takes to sit in the lane, the turn lane on 2nd, which does not have a flashing yellow.
Oh, sure, yep. Yep, I can relay that question, so see
Yeah.
if they have any plans.
And I
Encourage it to
I
be
have
more than a
another.
question, like a significant request.
Sure, yep,
Thank
yep.
you.
Wondering if there will be, this is also a signal thing.
Sure.
If there will be any delay so when a person pushes the walk light, if there'll be a little bit of a delay so that the walk light people can start walking before the right-hand turners turn or the left-hand turners turn with their flashing yellow light, they can clear that before. Is that something that's doable?
Don't quote me on this, but I believe that is kind of our standard now.
Good,
But I
okay.
will ask the traffic folks to confirm that.
Right, okay. Great. And that was all mine. Does anybody else have any questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Maybe for Mr. Bernard, I'm not sure, but how many folks are affected by the closure of Burson? I can appreciate why that's being done. Wasn't aware of it until we had the presentation. How many folks, businesses or homeowners, are affected by that closure?
We have a ADT for that, John.
We might have turn counts on that, but I have to talk to traffic. I know they were included in the westbound, eastbound 2nd Street movements originally, but I'll have to dig into that data a little more and see if we can get exact numbers for that 5th leg.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Garola.
Yeah, I just have 2 questions. You said on 2nd Street with the full lane closure, did you say 6 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks, that it would be quicker with the more significant?
Yeah.
If you weren't doing that, how long would it take?
We were thinking at least double the time, 3 to 4 months, because then you'd have to close each quadrant one at a time, still do all the temporary lane closures or reduce lanes on 2nd Street as you do those curb lines and ADA work.
And then my other question was just wondering how much, say, when you are considering detours, how much, say, do our city engineers get? Is it usually, oh, we've already sorted this out, too late, or are you pretty?
Nope, we've
closely?
been coordinating with Paul and Nate, and we've been relaying comments back and forth, and then our traffic, we'll have to have some sort of detour agreement with you, so it'll be a pretty good amount to say. Yep.
All right.
And then I do have the schedule if you want me to go through that.
That would be
quick,
great,
too.
yes.
Or if there's more questions on the project itself.
Yes, Councilmember Edberg.
Mayor, members of the council, I had one thing. As the detour, one of the things that we did highly consider on the west side and work with our public safety, both police and fire, as far as, obviously, that will cut access off to, police and fire there. We did have a very similar closure when we did the public safety building for about the same amount of time. They were able to work through it quite well. Didn't really affect things too bad. So we did work with those folks to make sure that that was more acceptable than the longer, multi-stage closure. So.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That was a big point that we've been trying to hammer out since probably 6 months ago. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Perhaps this is for our city engineer, perhaps for MnDOT, I'm not sure which. It's about the turn lane on Lake and 61. We had a number of conversations. What's the current status on the timing, the amount of time being allowed for particularly left-hand turns from Lake onto southbound 61? Has that been resolved, or is that still up in the air pending installation this summer?
Mayor, members of the council, I don't have the exact timing of it. I know that's something in progress. The actual construction of the signal with the modern cabinet and controls allows those adjustments. So Bill, I know 2nd Street is a quite old signal. You asked about the flashing yellow arrows, things like that. You need to have upgraded equipment cabinets, which that does not have. So once they're interconnected and they can actually all play together, some of that timing will be adjusted. So it's not a one and done. You know, it has to be done when the signal is put in. That can be adjusted as traffic flow is watched. So as that project is complete, as 2nd Street is completed in 27, watch for those kind of things. We pass those kind of complaints on to MnDOT, and they make adjustments as needed. So
I just wanted, thank you. I just wanted to emphasize that the response that we've historically received is that either the technology doesn't allow us to adjust,
Right, yep.
and so we can't change traffic stacking up on Lake, waiting to make a left-hand turn, can't adjust, et cetera, et cetera. Now that that's adjustable, awesome, thank you. But that 61 is still a state highway, so you guys are the ones that we have to
Yep.
cajole, entreat, request. Just wanted you to hear directly, that's an issue in our community, is those turn signs. So if they're being addressed, that's good. Thank
Good
you.
to know. Yeah, I'll relay those comments as well to our traffic group and just make sure they're aware of them as well.
Yeah, because coming down Lake, sometimes you only get like 5 seconds. I mean, and the light turns. And it seems like it's different all different times of day, and sometimes, yeah, it's very,
Yeah.
I've gotten lots of calls and emails on that.
Okay. No, good to know. Thank you.
And while I have you here, I'm wondering about the painting of on 4th Street, the line, and if you're going to have those done consistently along 61. So we don't have stop line, the big thick, do you call them stop
Yeah,
lines?
Stop bars.
the stop bars.
Yeah, the stop bars before the crosswalks. And so what's happened is people come way up to the crosswalk and sometimes cover the crosswalk.
Yep.
And also it makes it really dangerous for people walking across when the right-hand turners don't even hesitate, or there's a big truck there and they come right there. So I'm wondering if we can get those crossbars in all our intersections set pretty far, as far as you can, away from the crosswalk, because that's one of our biggest concerns in our community, is safety for people crossing that street, especially at 4th, but everywhere.
Yeah, I will, again, that'll be for our traffic group.
Okay.
Pavement markings is under their category, so I'll bring that to them as well and see. I'll also look at our plans and see what our plan is for that. And then if there's any other intersections they plan to do in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for coming in.
I'll just go over the schedule quick,
sorry.
just so everyone's aware of that. The letting date for this project is November 18th of this year. Put that in there wrong, they moved it up a week. We're almost done with the final design plans. Those will be going down to our CO office at the end of this month. And then the construction dates, I don't have hard dates yet, but we do anticipate starting like tree clearing operations over the winter of 26, 27, and then jumping right into construction spring 2027 with completion of the entire project by fall 2027. That being said, we also don't have the dates locked in yet for when the specific work will occur at 2nd Street, but more to come with that as we get our special provisions drawn up and cooperative agreement finalized.
All right.
But I believe that was it.
So Mayor, members of the council, just next steps from a city MnDOT standpoint would be to work through the cooperative agreement. There's a right-of-way access agreement as they realign the sidewalk kind of on the City Hall, corner of City Hall property there, to get the ped alignment to meet ADA requirements. Just a kind of a right-of-way permit that we issue between the agencies. So those 2 documents will be coming to council, just as a heads up. Some near future meetings, probably the right-of-way permit first, and then followed by the cooperative agreement later this summer. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5C, the 2025 financial audit. Ms. Kinsvater. Mayor and members of the council, tonight we have Brad Faltasek from Abdo with us. He will present the results of the 12/31/2025 year-end audit. He'll take questions, and then once the council finishes that, then there's a resolution to be adopted to accept the financial statements. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for
Hi,
having me.
welcome.
Honorable Mayor, council members. I think my presentation will be up in a second.
Just click next.
Oh, there it is. Just like that. Okay, so what we'll go through today is I'll first go through the audit results, just overall opinions, those types of things. Then we'll go through each of the different funds, general fund results, your other governmental fund results, your special revenue, capital projects, debt service funds, and then go through your enterprise funds. And then at the end, we have some charts that compare your city to other cities of similar size throughout the state of Minnesota, as well as cities in the county. So jump right into it. First, we'll talk about, we have issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on your financial statement. So that's the opinion you're looking for when you have a financial statement audit performed. So to arrive at that opinion, we'll identify different areas that are potentially higher risk, higher dollar amounts, make sure we verify a lot of that the money that comes in from the state with the state sends us a report showing all the money they sent you. We make sure that it was deposited and put in the right areas within the financial statements. Look at a lot of the tax revenues that are coming from the county, make sure those were deposited accurately. And then any other higher risk areas like utility receipts, you have a lot of transactions in utilities, so we take a little bit extra look at those as well. So I'll allow that to arrive at our opinion and get this unmodified or clean opinion. So we feel everything in the financial statements is materially accurate and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The state auditor also requires us to go through a series of checklists related to state statutes that they want us to test as part of our financial statement audit. So then we issue a compliance report on those checklists that we go through, and we have we didn't find any non-compliance with what we tested this year either. So clean reports on both of those. That's good. Any questions on the process or anything like that? Then we'll get into the results. So here's your general fund. You do have a policy, which is in that black shaded bar at the bottom. Your policy is to have a fund balance reserve at the end of the year of 35 to 50% of your following year's budget. So that's what that black bar is. And the red bar, or the one that's really close to it, I would say it's red, is where your fund balance ended up. So you're staying right at the top end of that 35 to 50%. So staying very consistent each year. You can see how your budget, that top yellow line, has increased over the years. So you have about a $21.5 million budget for 2026, and your fund balance reserves at the end of the year are 48.9%. So it's definitely staying within your range and at the top end of that range. So good results there. This report shows your budget to actual report for your general fund. So revenues budgeted just under 19 million. Actuals came in about the same, within $29,000 of what you actually budgeted. So 0.1% variance from your budget. Expenditures were about 2% variance from your budget with original and final. So those came in right as you expected for the year. You did have transfers in of about $900,000 to then finish the year with an increase of fund balance of about $470,000. Which, with the increase in budgets, you're going to need those increases in fund balance each year to maintain that 35 to 50% of reserves. General fund is where your revenues are coming from to support your general fund expenditures. Majority is taxes and assessments. You can see a jump in taxes and assessments from the previous year. You did have an increase in your levy from 24 to 25, so that accounts for that increase. All the other areas there, charges for service, intergovernmental. That intergovernmental includes state revenues, county revenues, and then anything other locally that you would receive, and then the other portion there. So majority of the support comes from your taxes and assessments in the general fund. Expenditures, same type of category, same thing, just broken down by department here, or function. Public safety is your biggest department or function that you're spending. Biggest increases in there were police and ambulance. Police had about a $650,000 increase and then ambulance had $250,000 from the previous year. So most of that was in salaries, or the majority of that was in salaries. Then we got the special revenue funds. So the special revenue funds are funds that are set up where you either have a committed or a restricted revenue source, and that's what kind of defines them as special revenue funds. They have revenues that are restricted or committed for a specific purpose. So we have funds here, and what we're looking for here are you collecting enough revenue to support your funds? So that last column you can show the increases and decreases from the previous year. Economic development had a $720,000 decrease in fund balance during the year, had some capital expenditures that made up the majority of that decrease. Then the housing fund, the 2025 housing fund that you received the affordable housing aid this year that you put in that fund and have not spent it yet. So that's the majority of that. Special revenue funds, this is kind of where the balances lie. You got restricted, that's the jump in that restricted, or that based on the axis there, it's a little bit of a jump, but that's the public housing aid that came in restricted. The rest of your funds are committed or assigned. Capital project funds, these are capital project funds you have outstanding, 6 of them. So again, here, are you able to support the different projects you have going on? So we look at the increases and decreases in fund balance at year end. Overall, of all your capital projects, had a $513,000 increase in your reserves in your capital projects funds. Not a lot of fluctuation in these funds this year. As far as fund balance, stayed fairly consistent with the previous year. Overall, had about a 2.7% increase in overall fund balance in your project funds. And the project funds, same thing here, restricted, committed, assigned. Majority of your reserves here are committed. And committed, I'll just define that. That is where council passes by resolution. You're committing these funds for a specific purpose. And if the city wanted to spend those those dollars on something else, council would have to do an equal resolution to release those funds for a different purpose. Assigned is more where management assigns it for a purpose where council doesn't really have any action that they need to do to assign those dollars. Debt service funds, so a little bit smaller here, but you do have, these are all your debt service funds you have outstanding. Just to point out, you do have, because on the next slide we show the debt service requirements by year for the next 10 years, just under $3.5 million each year for your debt service requirements. But if we look at this chart again, the first one to come off, the first one of these bonds to be paid off is in 2028. Then you have almost a 10-year gap there, I think a 9-year gap before the next one falls off. So then your last one here that goes out is 2024 or 44. So with these, again, we're just looking to make sure that cash balance is staying positive in each of these funds. You have reserves that you're be able to support your debt service funds, and I don't see an issue there. Okay, and then here again is that chart for the debt service requirements. Then we get into your enterprise funds, first with the water fund. This chart here shows just your operating receipts compared to your operating disbursements. So just on a cash basis, and what we look for here is, are your receipts able to support both your operating disbursements plus your debt service requirements? So water fund is doing well, or has been doing well with the increase in rates the last couple of years. You can see how the receipts have increased and you're covering your operating disbursements and debt. Again, looking at cash, these are your cash balances, unrestricted cash balances by year. You can see it's steadily increased over the years. We do have that black line in the middle is just showing what your, we always recommend a 50% reserve in your water and sewer funds just to have dollars on hand just in case something happens, that you'd be able to still support your operations on a monthly basis. So that's where that line is. Anything really above that line would be potentially used for capital or can be available for capital. Same thing with the sewer. Sewer, again, receipts have been meeting the disbursements. You don't have any debt service requirements in the sewer fund, but your increase or your receipts have been supporting your disbursements approximately the same amount each year. And then again, with your increase in cash each year and your cash balance, you can see your Cash balance has steadily been increasing. Again, anything above that black line potentially is available for capital or to support projects or those types of things. License Bureau, same thing here. License Bureau, for the most part, has been breaking even. You've been able to transfer about, I think last year's transfer about $70,000 out of this fund to support other city functions. So, and you still had you had that receipts over disbursements there. And with your cash balances, you can see your cash balance. We do have that 25% reserve there, that line. But your cash balances have been holding steady with slight increases the last couple of years. Nothing to be too alarmed with here necessarily, since you are maintaining your cash. What we tend to not like to see is a gradual decrease in your cash from year to year, and we're not seeing that with the License Bureau. So, overall cash and investments analysis. This takes a look at all of your cash within the city. You can see it's been around that 54,000, 56,000 this year, increased slightly. Overall, your mix between the different type, what the cash is being used for as far as capital funds, special revenue, debt, enterprise has stayed pretty consistent over the last few years. I think just looking at this, your enterprise funds cash balances have increased slightly. Your capital funds cash balances have increased slightly. Those are probably the major differences there. Now we get into kind of the comparisons where you kind of sit relatively with your tax rates, with your debt, those types of things with other communities or comparison communities. So we have listed here Class 2 cities. Class 2 cities are cities with populations between 20 and 100,000 in population. We have other cities in Ramsey County. These would be all cities that are not reporting on like a cash basis. So this pretty much excludes any really small cities. Then we broke out a separate peer group for 20 to 30,000 population cities throughout the state. And then the city of White Bear Lake is the line in each one of these. So you can see your tax rates are lower than all of your peer groups here with the closest one would be other cities in Ramsey County would be the closest ones to you in tax rate. So tax rates are lower than peers. We also added this chart this year, kind of the tax rate mix. I think you probably see this as part of your budget process as well, but this is what the other tax rates are that jurisdictions that are taxing your citizens. So your tax rate's at 30.4%, county rates at 47%, school is 35%. So what this doesn't show, this isn't 30% of all the tax, this isn't 30% of the taxes the residents pay. This is their tax rate that the city is charging. So that 30% is really 25% of all the taxes that a resident pays. A White Bear Lake resident pays into the county. They're paying about 25% of it to the city. Property taxes per capita. So this is just taking the total property taxes collected last year and divided by the population. You can see again here, you are lower than all of your peers in that category. Here's where you change though, long-term debt per capita. So your long-term debt has, in the last 4 years, has increased. You were below the per capita, long-term debt per capita, but as you've been issuing bonds or debt over the last few years, you've gone above that. The state, we don't have the 2024 data yet for their peers. The state doesn't have that compiled as of yet, so we just have through 23. But given the kind of the general trajectory of the peer groups, they probably are kind of close to where you are right now as far as once we get that data. I don't know for sure, but just following the trend, it looks like you're probably right in line with your peers, at least with 20 to 30,000 population cities throughout the state. And I will get into how that compares to your tax rates in a bit. But this next slide is the debt service expenditure. So consistent with the previous slide, you are higher than your peer groups in how much you're spending as a percent of your current expenditures. So taking a look at all your expenditures are current in debt service, you're spending a higher percentage in debt than your peers. So how does that happen? How does that correlate to a lower tax rate? I think this chart kind of helps explain that too. What you're spending on a current expenditures per capita basis, just on general operation type expenditures, you're quite a bit less than your peer groups in this category. So what you're not spending in your kind of just general operations type stuff, you're spending more in your debt service expenditures to support different projects throughout the city and improvements that are going on in the city. So, but even with this and with the debt, you still currently are at a lower tax rate than your peers. So with that, that is the wonderful crew that helped do the audit, and I will take any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Faltesek. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I do have some questions, and it's in your charts.
Perfect.
The chart, key performance indicators, tax rates. Could you explain, the percentages are ratios of what? What gives us, it's a ratio
What's
of?
your tax rate?
Yeah,
How you come up with the tax rate?
yeah.
Okay, it's kind of complicated, but I'll try to break it down fairly quickly. So based on your tax base, the county will calculate a tax capacity for tax capacity in the city. So then they take your tax levy, I believe it's a tax, I might get it backwards, tax capacity divided by your tax rate gives you, tax capacity divided by your tax levy gives you your tax rate. So that's the percentage that a resident or any property is going to be charged based on their property, the tax capacity of their property value. So if you have make it so you have a $200,000 home, residential home, their tax capacity is 1% of that value. So you can say 2,000 times 30% would be their taxes, is kind of how it comes out,
Okay.
roughly.
So what's the what's the relevance of this particular statistic? I think I know, but I'd like to hear you tell me.
Relevance of what your tax rate is?
This and the comparison to the other
Sure.
neighboring and
Yep.
relevant communities.
If we look at other 20 to 30,000 population cities across the state, a $200,000 home multiplied by 1% tax capacity, $2,000, they'd be charged 43%. You take 2,000 times 43% to come up with what they're going to pay for taxes. You're getting charged 30% of that 2,000. Your residents are 30% of that 2,000, where another community would be charging 43% of that 2,000 for that property tax.
So a comparable home in another community would be paying a higher level of property tax compared to that same valued home located in the city of White Bear Lake.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Could we go to the long-term debt per capita chart? And recognizing we don't have all the data that we would want to use. Looking at the city of White Bear Lake for the last 4 years, the black line goes up and stays high, but the dollars per down in the bottom line are relatively stable. Is there any source of concern that you would highlight for us as policymakers about our relative expenditure of capital, taking on debt compared to
What are you saying? The bottom line looks fairly consistent, comparable?
Well, 1044, 1410,
Yep.
1466, 1490, not massive changes.
Nope.
Increases, but not massive changes. Considering we just built a $15 million public safety building, we
Yep.
bonded for street construction and so forth. We've taken on and issued debt
Yep.
at a hefty level in the last few years. Previously, we've mostly paid cash or a higher percentage of cash. To me, looking at those dollars per capita, it's stable, affordable, reasonable, maybe even predictable.
Okay.
Am I reasonable? Is that a reasonable conclusion? Or how would you interpret that relatively flat dollars of debt per capita?
From 2023 to now, it's been flat. From 21 to 23, it obviously doubled. So if $600 is a big number, it's going to be big to some people. It may not be big to others. So it's kind of how you want to interpret it, personally, I guess. We could certainly make the y-axis bigger, and it would flatten the line out too. So it's kind of, it looks big. It looks like a big increase, probably because the axis is somewhat narrowed too. So, but over the last few years, it's fairly, you can see it's been fairly flattened out.
Okay. Let me shift gears.
Yep.
So your firm audits a number of other municipalities, both our size, probably a bunch of them smaller, I don't know, maybe some bigger. I'm interested in your perceptions about our revenue mix. We don't get very fancy in how many different sources of revenue. That's my opinion.
Sure.
What's your take on the mix of revenues that we make use of compared to some of our peers in the metro area? We'll stay with that.
Yeah, I don't think the mix is all that different. There's some metro cities that have implemented local option sales tax.
Yeah.
That's something that I don't believe you've maybe even talked about or approached yet. So, there's that, and there's a process to go about getting that implemented, and there's probably some studies that need, whether it's worth it or not too. But, so there's that out there that some communities are working with. You do already, a lot of times when I get a question, are there other revenue sources? I'll talk about franchise tax, franchise fees, and those types of things, which you have. But I think some of the other communities are collecting quite a bit more. So
More
maybe,
aggressive.
more aggressive. So it might be a good idea to take a look at some of those other communities and see what they're charging compared relative to what you guys are charging, and is there some options there? Obviously, those will get funneled back to the residents too, but it's a different source.
The reason I'm asking. I anticipate that the state is going to have challenges from a fiscal standpoint in the next 1 to 4 years, 1 to 3 years. That will translate into actions that they'll have to decide whether they're going to keep local government aid at similar levels. We have an exposure there. It's about 1 point something million. Yeah. So if that goes down, we either have to reduce services, increase local taxes, or find other sources of revenue. And before it gets to be an emergency, I'm thinking we would be wise to at least think about what are other communities doing, what are other options that are available to us to maintain revenues in the event of state reductions.
Yep.
We've had those. That's been a lived experience a couple of times in my tenure. Not fun. We managed to survive. Do you have any suggestions for us on how to think about that conversation?
I know some communities have tried to, because of what happened in the past in the LGA, have tried to wean themselves off of relying on it. So I know you have a long-range plan that you work with and update on an annual basis. So that might be something where you're currently getting 1.7 or whatever that is, and try to, even though you potentially project it out that you're going to get it, maybe try to wean yourself off and not use it for general ongoing expenditures. Use it for just move it into the capital fund and try to slowly maybe just move it 100% into capital and not use it for general operations, and try to build that up. So then if you do get a time where they pull back or cut it, it's not going to fit. You may have to cut a capital project or a purchase of some nature like that, but not affect your general day-to-day operations.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
I have some other comments, but
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
if I could.
Councilmember
So
Edberg.
here's my summary, and I welcome your feedback. Based on the audit, we have an unmodified opinion. So if I were Shannon Granholm writing an article about this, here are the 6 points that come to me about, is White Bear Lake, the city White Bear Lake, managing its resources responsibly? So number one, we have an unmodified opinion meeting. Our processes are in good order. You found no non-compliance, et cetera, so our processes are in reasonably good shape. The numbers that we present to the public fairly and reasonably represent our actual condition.
Correct.
Our year-end revenue and expenditures are within reasonable variations. We make projections. Yes, the world happens. We make decisions during a year, but at the end of the year, our projections are reasonably accurate compared to from the beginning of the year to the close of the books.
Yep.
We are in compliance with state statutes and in compliance with the auditor's recommendations for fund balance levels. And so we are maintaining responsible levels of resource for managing and running the city and being prepared for unforeseen activity.
Yep.
The taxes that we assess to our taxpayers, our local taxpayers, are lower than what a comparable taxpayer would pay in other of our comparable cities, whether that's in the metro, cities of the same size, et cetera. We are below, less than the norm in each of those situations.
Correct.
And then not included in your presentation, but in our packet, we have external validation from the Government Finance Officers Association for Certificate of Excellence for our processes in budgeting and reporting. And you may or may not have known this, but we got a AA+ rating from Moody's on our most recent bond rating. That's a continuation. That wasn't a one-time. That's been a continuation. For those in the audience, AA+ is one notch below the gold standard of AAA. All of those things are external validations of the work that we do.
Correct.
Are my assumptions or my conclusions reasonable and
Conclusions are all
accurate?
correct, yep.
All right,
Yep.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Gurula.
Yeah, I just had a quick clarifying question about what you said about the property taxes and long-term debt. So you said our long-term debt above our peers. Yes, we built a new fire station, those things, and public safety building. Others have done that too, but your reasoning, just so I'm understanding, was because our property taxes are lower than our peers, our long-term debt, because we have to take out more debt to fill those? Is that what you were saying, or am I not understanding?
No, your long-term debt is higher. Let's see. Your long-term debt's higher than your peers, or maybe right at your peers. So, and how you pay the debt back typically is tax levy or assessments. So how is your long-term debt higher at your peers, but your tax levies are lower is the question. And what I was saying is because your general current expenditures to just fund operations, you're not collecting as much. Those are less, so you can spend, you're spending less on the just current general operations, more on the debt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks finance staff too, appreciate all the help.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
just before you take a vote, I want to thank Abdo. Thank you for conducting our audit. It's always a pleasure to work with you, but a special thank you to our finance staff, Director Kinsvater and Assistant Finance Director Horde, for coming back so we can continue what we're doing, but for just doing a great job. We said it when we issued debt a couple meetings ago, but this really showcases another really good year of solid financial management. And that really does extend to our department heads as well, who pay very close attention to their department budgets. It really does take a village to make sure that our finances are running smoothly, in addition to our finance department. And I couldn't be more proud to be the city manager here in the way that we do continue to manage our finances very strongly. So thank you to everybody.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the resolution of the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report as presented?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes. Okay, 5D, Public Works and Engineering Departments Biannual Report. Mr. Copey.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you so much. Tonight, like you said, we will have our biennial report. This period, or why we chose this period, or kind of the periods to do public works, is it covers our winter months. So generally November through April. Kind of an awkward months or times, most people go, annually or, 6 months at a time, but this happens to cover our winter months perfectly, and then our next report will cover kind of the summer months. Completely different operations, so we're, ready to go. From a staffing standpoint, we've been very stable. We have, I think since I've been doing these reports, we've had a couple of new hires, new positions added. This is the first time I think I've presented to the council since I've been doing these reports where we've had somebody leave. In this case, we have kind of in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, we have our mechanic spot open. 2 weeks ago, we had our lead mechanic spot open. So fortunately, we had 2 very good mechanics. With the departure of our lead mechanic, I went through a process and promoted our mechanic to the lead mechanic. So we'll be going out for a mechanic position here shortly. That ad should be going out soon. It'll be internally posted and then go out to the rest of the world, and hopefully we get some good candidates. So if you know anybody out there listening, we'd love to invite you to apply and maybe find a good mechanic here. So that's kind of the story of our staffing. Just kind of recap, we have, besides myself, we have 5 people in the engineering side and then 22 people in the public works side, 2 of those being more the office staff, our admin assistant and our public works superintendent. The other 20 folks are water, sewer, parks, facilities, streets, and our facility or our fleet. So majority of those are out, boots on the ground, getting the work done that is mentioned in the proclamation and Ms. Crawford's introduction to Public Works Week. So here we go is Danny Tyson, who's here tonight. He was promoted from mechanic to lead mechanic, so looking forward to Danny's leadership, great experience here in the community, as well as the city. So looking forward to his leadership here at Public Works. I'll jump right into fleet division. And then a few statistics to follow here, but so most of what the fleet services does is the preventive maintenance and then repairs. So preventive maintenance are the oil changes, filter changes, tire rotations, that kind of thing. And then once we get into the more major repairs, it's, an alternator went out, steering went out, need to do brakes, anything that requires kind of the, the non-Jiffy Lube type activity. So we also do our own DOT inspections, meaning that we inspect each of our heavy vehicles to make sure that they meet DOT requirements before we send them on the road. Our bigger trucks, such as the vac truck, our big mainline plow trucks, things like that. They also spend a lot of time coordinating outsourced repairs. So tire work we don't do in-house, requires all kinds of specialized equipment. Body work, warranty work, recalls, things like that. You'd be amazed at how much time is spent tracking down warranty and recall with the dealerships. Just the technology in our newer vehicles is staggering, and obviously we get a lot of those kind of recalls and warranty work and following up with those dealerships to get that work done. And then fleet has always been, not that our whole public works isn't, but fleet has traditionally really jumped on some unique projects. They did squad car outfitting in coordination with those vendors. We do most of our upfitting of our, in this case, our public works trucks. As they come in, we put the graphics on, the light bars, the plows, all that kind of stuff. So that's a major thing that our fleet maintenance division does. This year they coordinated generator maintenance contracts. We're upgrading most of our generators to natural gas so that we're not trading out diesel. The diesel will gel up. Issues in the wintertime, obviously, in Minnesota with the cold temperatures. So as we've had the opportunity to upgrade our generators, we've gone to natural gas. Much more efficient, cleaner, but just a little bit different operations. So it's more efficient to have a contractor come in and do those routine checks on them, make sure that they're functioning correctly and ready to go. So a few little statistics here. Again, the two main things that our fleet divisions does is preventive maintenance. It can go up and down depending on how many miles vehicles are driving. As you can imagine, even down to snowfall. If we have a light snowfall year, maybe we don't drive as much, so we're not doing as many preventive maintenance. Most of that actually comes from, and just as a reminder, Fleet Services does all of the city. So it does public safety, building inspections, engineering, public works, sports center, all those. So every vehicle that the city owns, the Fleet Division gets their hands on in some way, shape, or form. So. Most of that activity is obviously public safety. They do drive the most miles out there, so a lot of the I'll call it the average component becomes the public safety. And then the other one is work orders, kind of the more major things, the brakes, the more major repair. Not that things are failing, but just things wear out. So need to change tires, need to do brakes on cars. That's all included in the work order statistic here. Next up, Streets Division. Streets is one of the main components from a wintertime operations. This year we had 37 snow events. Of those, 32 were full downtown events where we were sweeping and plowing the sidewalk, stacking, oftentimes having to truck out excess snow out of the downtown. We had 40 inches of snow this year. I'll show you a couple statistics afterwards. That's kind of interesting. Road salt really depends on the type of, you might say, oh, more snow, more salt. Not necessarily. A lot of it has to do with the temperatures, what type of snow we're getting, whether it gets packed on the, what time of the day. If it gets packed on the roads, during a midday and we can't get out there and plow, we typically will use a little bit more salt because of just the timing of the event. If the perfect snow would start at midnight, we'd finish at 2. We would come in and plow, and cars would never drive over it, and we'd never use a whole lot of salt. So it's such a variable operation that we have to manage. Streets also, as time allows, they get out and do some tree trimming. That's kind of one of their other major activities in the wintertime. And then right away in the spring, we were able to get out quite early this year in March and start doing our spring street sweeping. We really try to get that up before the spring rains so that doesn't wash into our lakes and ponds and things like that. So we really want to get out there as early as we can. We got a sweet spot of about 2 to 4 weeks to get out there before we get spring rains to get all that swept up. Other activities, they follow up with pothole repairs, water main break assistance. We'll get to that a little bit in the water, but all our divisions lend a hand with as a water main break gets reported. Each of our divisions get involved in some way, shape, or form. And then they try to do, obviously, not having snow, they try to jump in and do other work inside. This year they went through and helped our fleet mechanics overhaul the street sweeper for spring operations, just to make sure we had that ready to go. Here's a couple of statistics here, charts that I'm going to show you. It's kind of interesting. They started plotting this out. Here's the number of snow events that we had. So what's kind of intriguing is you look at 2022 and 2026, same amount of snow events, right? We actually had less in 23. Right now, 24 and 25, kind of irrelevant. But we go to the next slide, and we show snow totals. 22 and 26 only had about 40 inches of snow, but had more snow events than 2023. If I jump back, you see 70 in 23, there were 78 inches of snow, but only 31 events. That's what I'm saying. There's so much variability in what in how we do our snow operations based on the number of events, the amount of snow that falls in each event. So just kind of intriguing to kind of watch and show both council and the general public how that varies. Nothing's the same anytime they go out and plow. Next up, Water Division. This is one of the divisions that's fairly routine. You know, we pump water, we treat water, we send it out to the public to consume, especially during the wintertime. There's, you know, it's all basically general consumption. It's not exterior use like, you know, washing a car, irrigation, garden watering, things like that we'll see in the summertime. So that 300 million gallons is kind of a, you know, if I showed you a graph, it would be a straight line, you know, not very interesting by any means. It's kind of pretty steady during the wintertime. Our population's not increasing or decreasing, so we really don't have a whole lot of variation. Same thing with our spent lime that we haul out from our treatment operations, our water softening operations. The one thing in the wintertime that our water division does, and this year we actually had fairly low number of water main breaks. We only had 14 this year. I'll show you some statistics here in a minute, but that can make or break, you know, how busy they are and how much the other divisions get pulled into. You know, they need to be excavated, the road needs to be repaired, the sewer division comes out and uses the Vector to, you know, clean the hole out and help. Typically we have a contractor come out and help us with that activity. They have the trench boxes and the pipe work skills to help us get those done quickly. Obviously in the wintertime we want those done as fast as we can, otherwise we're getting water spraying all over, freezing, icing up the road. So pretty important to get that done early. Then the other thing that the water division does at the kind of before the peak of the season, we get in and do our water plant maintenance. Typically late April, early May. This year we'll get in kind of late April timeframe. Our water division has been really focused on catching up on a lot of maintenance needs. A couple of things that they've been working on and did this year. We did the top picture there, shows the accelerator basin. They changed every bearing, like 60 bearings in this accelerator basin to make sure that they were ready to go. And for summer season, we have kind of periodic failures, but it was kind of getting to the point where it made sense to replace all of the bearings. This rotates. Those of you who've been, I think everyone's been to the water plant, but it just slowly rotates around and around and around 24/7. So those bearings eventually will wear out, and now's the time to do it before we get into our busy summer season, so we don't have any failures. The other thing that they've been doing is really trying to kind of go through the entire treatment plant and get things kind of general maintenance. This year the focus was epoxy coating the floors. Again, those of you who've seen the lime, it's just sticky, it cakes on everything. The epoxy is going to really help be able to wash that down, keep the plant a lot cleaner. We also added a anti-slip resistant to it to help, a lot of water, a lot of slippery stuff there, so just to increase safety throughout the plant. So we did the floors, the stairs, the lime collection trough to help wash that out. A lot of those, and then projects that they've been working on as well as well one rehabilitation. We do those in the spring to try to get ahead of the summer season, so that our wells are ready to go. And we rotate. We have 4 active wells, so we rotate those one every 4 years. So kind of each well gets looked at every 4 years. So this year was well 1. And then one of the other 3 will be the next 3 years, and we'll be back to well 1 in 4 years. And then one thing that we had not done that myself and the water division recognized, we wanted to have our 1 million gallon clear well. So we have 3 different storage facilities within the city. Our Centerville Road 1 million gallon tank. Over on Century Avenue, we have a 3 million gallon standpipe. And then right at the water treatment plant site, we have a 1 million gallon big concrete underground clear well. So all the treated water that leaves the plant goes into the clear well. It hadn't been inspected or looked at in many years. So we had that inspection report come in with flying color. So they said it's in very good condition. A few little minor upgrades and things, but a lot more minor than we had anticipated. It's being built in 1965. We're thinking we're going to have major cracks and whatnot, but overall in very good condition. Just a few little maintenance things that they want done. So that was very good news. So here, mentioned earlier, water main breaks. As you can see also, it kind of goes up and down. Again, we had kind of a light year. Most of the time it's been that 25-ish, give or take, on an average year. A lot of it has to do with temperature and snowfall. So you might ask, what does snowfall have to do with? It insulates the ground. So, but it also depends on when we get the snow. If we get cold temperatures early in December and it freezes and the frost goes down really well, but we don't get snow until March, the damage has already been done. So it's really a kind of like snow plowing. It's, when does the cold come? When does the snow come? So how deep that frost goes really affects, what that water main, breaks are from year to year. So we track those. One thing that we started to do, and I'll probably have the next time we present, we've been trying to get our mapping up to date. So it's actually in GIS mapping all of our water main break locations. So that we can kind of target areas as we talk about the budget and things where we might need to focus efforts to do water main replacement or, things like that as we get projects come up in the future. So just so we can kind of target those areas based on data versus just kind of guessing, we need to replace this water main. We actually have kind of, hey, this stretch of water mains had, 50 water main breaks in the last 10 years. So we need to focus maybe an effort on doing a project. So trying to get that information in GIS so that it's much more easily trackable. Sewer division. No offense to sewer, but this is the most boring time, routine. I won't say boring, routine time for them. It's they get out and do as much televising and jetting as they can. Temperatures play a big part in that because the equipment freezes. We're spraying water, we're sucking water up, and you can cause damage to the equipment. It's kind of dangerous. You get out in the sub-freezing conditions, and guys are working on water, whatnot, and just not conducive to that. So they spend a lot of their winter operations doing lift station maintenance, repairs. Things like that, so that when summertime comes and they can do their televising and jetting, they can focus on that, as well as stormwater. Connie will be talking about stormwater here next on the agenda, but that's a big thing too in the summertime, is doing our stormwater inspections, maintenance of our manhole sumps to get the grit and debris out of the stormwater before it gets in our ponds and lakes. So. Data-wise, sewer is extremely boring as well. I show on the screen there we had one sewer main backup call. It averages between 0 and 1. So that's not a very fun graph to show you or statistic to show you. So it's 0 or 1 in the last probably 10 years. So very few issues. And if we do actually have an actual backup in our main, it's typically where grease, from restaurants and things like that kind of collect, and, a rag or a little debris will catch up on that and cause a backup. So they also use the winter time to do the sewer line grease treatment. So they kind of a grease solvent they put in the lines that kind of dissolves that grease as they jet so that they can clear those out so that we don't have those backups. And then they also do a lot of customer service with customer service line backups. So a resident will call and say, hey, my water's coming up in my, basement drain, what I do. So our guys very diligently go out and help residents with those kind of issues. We have a push camera that we can televise, locate the issues for them, and then head them in the right direction, whether it be if they need to do major repairs, or sometimes it's just having Roto-Rooter or a company like that come out and clean their lines for them. So a lot of it is their customer service side of it. And then our streets department is the main folks that drive our plow trucks, but 2 of our sewer guys also drive our mainline plow trucks. We have 4 streets guys on the plows, and then 2 sewer folks. So that takes a little bit of the manpower out of the kind of the sewer operations, put them in the snow operations. So And then one thing that they got to do fun is we purchased the property next to South Fire, and last November they got to tear down the 2 garages, so that kind of falling down anyways. Fire was able to use them for some demos for their open house, and then we were able to come in afterwards, tear them down, and get them out of the way and clean that up fairly efficiently. So that was kind of a fun little side project that our sewer guys got to do. Parks and facilities. This is decorations, holidays. So basically from October through December, and then into January, even removing a lot of that stuff. You can see they spend 400 plus hours getting our city looking great for the holiday season, the lighting, the garland, trees, all that kind of stuff. So, and those duties, as well as trying to open and close the park. So each October, end of October, there's a kind of the mid to end of October is a big rush to close our bathrooms, blow out the water, close them up for the season so things don't freeze. And then they jump right into doing the holiday activities. So that's a lot of what they do for most of the winter. They also help with plowing operations downtown. They lead the downtown plowing operations. They're busy all winter long. This year they actually got to, I didn't put a statistic on here, but for a few weeks they got to even flood the rinks, which they haven't been able to do the last few years. But it didn't last very long. We had some weird up and down in temperatures as well. And then facilities has been routine maintenance and preventive maintenance. Our facilities staff go out and do those every day, every week. And then they work with each of the divisions and departments to do other big building projects, and some stuff down at South Fire with painting, new generator transfer switch over at Public Safety, new fire suppression in City Hall. So all kinds of things like that they work on and help coordinate in each of the buildings as well. Work with every department, kind of like Lindy said, I mean, with the budget, with everything, I mean, we jump in and we try to help everybody out and work with them. Engineering, again, not a lot of statistics. The engineering division just pumps out projects. This year, a lot with the 26th Street Rehab Project. And not only are we designing the following year's projects, we're trying to close out the previous year's project. So we're, in the November, December, doing punch list things, making final payments, things like that, overlapping with the design of the following year's projects. We also worked, late last year, we got our tree ordinance done. We'll be hopefully cutting some ash trees down and replanting here shortly. That's moving forward, getting those quotes and those bids out as we speak. We did a Otter Lake Road agreement, that transfer agreement. Mentioned recently here that we have just a couple little pieces of paperwork to finish up, and we'll be able to finish that transfer. And hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have that completely done and be able to re-sign things and make that ours, and hopefully get some of that truck traffic off of Otter Lake Road. And then MnDOT was here tonight. We've worked on a couple of signal projects, both the Highway 96 61 and then the 2nd Street 61 project with them. Connie's been working a lot with the different agencies on stormwater projects with our water management organization. So tons of agreements, tons of side work that I won't say goes unnoticed, but she spends a lot of time working with those agencies, getting those projects done to help keep our lakes and ponds clean. I do a lot of private project reviews, work with the Community Development Department very closely, heading those private project reviews for stormwater requirements and utility connections, things like that. We issue right-of-way permits, so every one of anything that happens within our right-of-way by the private utility companies, telecom, electric, gas, all go through us to make sure that they put them in the right locations, they restore things correctly, that kind of thing. And then also kind of overlapping into a lot of other departments is our GIS. I'll call them department, but their division. Matt does a great job trying to keep up with engineering, public works, community development, public safety. He's done a lot of projects for us. So really trying to map everything that we have. So one thing that he did work on or has been working on the last few years is a project map that we put in our newsletter. So he worked with all of the city functions to make sure that everybody's projects are in there and those descriptions are put into the newsletter each year so the residents know what's happening in town. Last couple things are advisory commissions. This is kind of I'll call it a slow time for them as well, but they do a lot of their, so the two that Engineering Public Works oversees is the Environmental Advisory Commission and the Parks Advisory Commission. They do a lot of planning to get ready for the summer events that they have coming up, such as the Environmental Resources Expo at the Market Fest, Public Works Open Houses. We have our Parks Department and then I'll mention with the advisory commissions, they pick a few little projects each year. This year it was, they've been working with Market Fest, Touch Truck, different community events to try to make those zero or low waste events. Parks Advisory Commission, a lot of what we do is, at that commission is work on planning for the next year's projects. This year we had some review of Podman Park playground equipment and then the skate park, upgrading those pieces of equipment within those parks. So they help review vendor proposals and whether it be even picking what colors and styles, what type of equipment to put in those parks. And then late last fall we did a kind of a restoration of a native area within Bossard Park that had kind of been done quite a number of years ago. We had a friend of one of our Parks Commission members come and say, hey, nothing's been done here for a while. What happened? Well, it happened before all of our current staff was here and didn't really know about it, so we kind of got reintroduced to it. And a lot of volunteer hours by Parks Commission and some of the neighbors to get that area re-restored. So we're continuing to work on that as well. Lastly, I have is the spring cleanup was our last big event, kind of the all of Public Works operations. You might even find the mayor in one of these pictures, I think. But thanks to you to coming out and supporting the Public Works folks. They did appreciate it. Mayor got her hands in emptying trailers and delivering donuts, all kinds of things. So we do appreciate your support over at Public Works for that. So a lot of hours goes into planning and pulling that off. So. And lastly, and Lindy's going to mention this in her communications as well, but we invite everybody to our Public Works, our third annual Public Works Open House. That'll be on Wednesday, May 20th from 5 to 7 p.m. at our Public Works facility on Hoffman Road. So hope to see everybody out there. With that, I will open any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you for all of that. And I mean, I just have to say that you guys do so much to make this city run so smoothly that I have learned in the last 3 months. And just in watching you guys and knowing what all you do, I just thank you. And it's nobody really pays much attention until something maybe goes wrong, but you do a lot of work behind the scenes to make everything go smoothly, and I thank you for that. I have a question about customer service backup calls. Do we charge for that, or does the city just do that?
We just
Like when the sewer, if somebody
for
calls?
sewer backup calls,
Yeah.
We often get on a similar note. We'll come out for a water or like a leak that someone identifies, and
Right.
it'll be a water service leak. We don't charge for our calls to go out there, so
Okay.
it's a customer service component that we go out there. It's those lines are private. The homeowner owns those from their home out to the main. So try to lessen that burden on them to do what we can to help them navigate that. We also, to Jason's department, building inspections getting involved with a lot of those as well, helping them navigate, who might, what plumbers or contractors they need to help navigate those repairs. So that's just a customer service standpoint that we do.
Okay, thanks. And my other question is, or statement is just great news about the inspection, because when I was out there and they hadn't done it yet, and so I'm very relieved to hear about that. So great news. Does anybody else have any questions? Councilmember West.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did a tour of Public Works not too long ago and learned a lot of things. So people really should go to the Public Works open house. If you want to know more about when your street is going to get plowed, they have extensive maps that you can see there. It's very interesting. But my question really is about, we talked a lot about kind of the fleet and the number of vehicles now that has increased. Because we have increased staff, specifically to fire and police. So can you talk a little bit about what our city and our mechanics do to help maintain those vehicles, and how the increase has impacted that, and what happens if we don't have those mechanics, and kind of where you're looking at, kind of the near future needs?
Mayor, members of the council, maybe just like I mentioned early in my presentation with our staffing, obviously we're regrouping. We lost one of our mechanics. Every mechanic has a different skill set and technique, so we'll have to see where we go. But from especially the specialty kind of components of things, when you look at you bring your car to a dealership or a repair shop, there's guys that focus on different things. You have transmission guys, you have engine guys, you have guys that just do brakes or tires or oil changes. Our mechanics are, jack of all trades. They can do or diagnose most anything, but there are specialties, within the fleet. The average squad cars, the trucks, things like that are, pretty, standard. Where we really come into, looking at the needs is the specialty piece of equipment, the bigger, heavy equipment at Public Works, the jetter, the big dump trucks, what else? The fire engines, the fire apparatus is a big one. Just the size of them, the complexities of them. Mechanic to mechanic, the mechanic that we lost, was willing to jump in and try everything, and not that our current, Danny's not. It's a matter of what their, past experiences are. So we'll look at, as we hire a second mechanic, we'll be looking at what their, where those specialty, what that specialty's need looks like, that can complement, Danny's skills, so that we can get, and then once we get that on board, we'll have to kind of reevaluate what, obviously we, see, growth and changes within police and fire, the number of pieces of equipment, even within Public Works, it's evaluating, which pieces of equipment we own, we rent, we, maybe even what we buy to help save man hours. Sometimes a small piece of equipment helps save a ton of man hours, so we don't have to hire another staff person. So all those are constantly being evaluated. As far as, future staffing needs, I think we'll have to wait, especially now where we're sitting today, have to see where this next mechanic, to fill the vacancy, how that person falls into place, and then see from there what we need. Our fleet is fairly new, fairly good condition, so a lot of it, like you saw in the charts, is pretty routine maintenance. The oil changes, the brakes, the just kind of the day-to-day check-in, like you would, you bring it in for your routine every 5,000 mile checkup kind of thing. So kind of just wait and see after we get our second mechanic and see where we go. But, there are talks, prior to being down a mechanic, that maybe we needed a third mechanic, especially with all the specialty items that keep that the, the industry keeps coming up with. Everything is more complex. It takes more time to diagnose. It's not just recalls, recalls the warranty items is a huge part of it. Even just coordinating it So even when we had 2 mechanics, a lot of, one of those mechanics' times was in the office making phone calls, getting cars back and forth to dealerships to get those warranty and recalls completed, so.
Before we go further, I just want to add on to Director Copy, what you just said. I've shown council before a picture of a pallet full of boxes, and in those boxes, an entire pallet worth of equipment that goes into one police squad car. And it was over 20 hours. That might be under, I don't remember now. It was well over 20 hours to build that squad out. And so when a squad is damaged or in an accident, that's unexpected, in addition to just purchasing it. But the likelihood of, just to cut to the chase, we may need a third mechanic. We've talked about that with council at the last budget cycle, but we didn't propose it for 26. I don't know if we'll propose it for 27, but there's that likelihood that we may. But again, we'll need to evaluate the expertise of the mechanic that we bring on to replace the vacancy.
And can I just follow up one more thing? I think part of the point of me asking that too is my recollection from previous conversations is our mechanics save a lot of money for the city in not having to send out all of our vehicles to do all of the routine maintenance and kind of the other fixing that they do. So that's correct. Is that correct?
Mayor, members of the council, that is correct. We have the last probably 3 or 4 years sent very few items beyond, I'll call it beyond the recalls, warranties. There's a few specialty items, like I mentioned, like tires. We don't have a tire changing machine. It's just not cost effective for us to do that and have the tires in stock. So a few things like that. Body work, we don't have a body, shop here at the city. So things like that, that's very specialized transmission work that we would send out and continue to do so even if we hired an additional mechanic. But you are right, and Ms. Crawford stated that we can do a lot of these things. The squad builds, the public works and different departments upfit of their new vehicles. So we get a new, you go buy a new vehicle and you just drive it, right? There needs to be lights and switches and, things like that, graphics put on all the vehicles that we get into the city, regardless of, which division has it. So, yes, there is a cost savings in keeping that in-house. So I would anticipate at some point in time we will, as things get more complex and we have more vehicles, that adding a third mechanic definitely would continue to save the city money.
Okay, Councilmember Gurula.
Yeah, sticking with the kind of equipment theme, when I was on the Environmental Advisory Commission, we did a survey where we asked numerous cities how they feel about electric equipment. For example, like chainsaws, an electric chainsaw versus gas, and a lot of them had positive feedback. Again, I like it when it's cost effective and makes sense, and if the people using it like it better, but a lot said it was lighter, less maintenance. How do you feel? We're comparing none of the cities we surveyed, I believe, had any policy. We asked them, do you have a policy around this? And they didn't. But how do you feel we are doing? Do we look at electric options often when we need to replace these things? Or do we go straight to gas or what? I know it's a more in the field question, but if you have any type of idea or...
Mayor, members of the council, good question. Actually, a lot of those, at least a small piece of equipment, I'll get into the bigger stuff in a minute, but the small piece of equipment, the chainsaws, the lawnmowers, things like that, especially the handheld, the push type mowers, things like that, our public works staff actually prefer the electric over the gas. So as we have the opportunity to replace those, they actually prefer them. They're quieter. They're ready to go. You don't have to, in the spring now, you don't have to clean carburetors and make sure that they're running, the gas didn't go bad in them and things like that. So they're much safer. They're easier to keep in the vehicle. So a lot of the guys actually have, their little portable chainsaw in there, and it's like, hey, there's a storm came through. Can you cut the tree down? It's right in their truck. They just do it. Then they're not storing it, at Public Works and whatnot. So as we have the opportunity to replace a lot of that small equipment with the rechargeable battery style, our staff prefers it. Whether we need to have a policy on it, right now I don't see them going back from it. They really do like it. All their, even their handheld power tools are all, battery operated. So they do like them, and I would see them continuing to prefer them and buy them. As far as bigger equipment, a lot of us have had conversations over them. They just haven't been readily available from a Public Works equipment standpoint yet. We continue to go to the vendor days, and we've been to a number of the I'll call it touch a truck for Public Works and other operations, where we get to go see what's coming out. They just haven't had a lot of it in the bigger piece of equipment come out yet. So we'll continue to monitor that as those become available in the future.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
My other one is, you talked a lot about GIS and how I think it's extremely beneficial to have those updated maps and things. And I know we have interns. I saw one post on LinkedIn. It showed up on my LinkedIn that they were working for Whitebear, and they were proud, and I was glad to see that. But I was wondering if you foresee, I know we look at budgets and costs, and if that's a internship program, we'll be able to continue having GIS interns in the future, because I think it's a real benefit to students trying to get that workforce experience, and also to us to support city staff in these importance. But I was just curious what you foresee, whether that's something we have to look at or we'll be able to continue.
Mayor, members of the council, so traditionally we had typically hired 2 interns for as long as, predates me being here. They'd always hired 2 interns, both of them being engineering interns that help with the field work and things like that. After we hired our GIS staff member about 4 years ago, we really looked at the need for, a lot of you need to do so much on the computer, but there's a lot of field work that goes into it, GPS. So, now it's been last year, it's been our first year, we have a dedicated GPS unit, so they can, that our GIS staff member has, that as things come up, I talked about the water main breaks, as the water main break comes up, now those will all be mapped this spring. He's going to go out and he map them. It'll go in the GIS so that we know where those happen. So summertime is a busy time of the year. So this will be year number 3 that we will reallocated one of those engineering interns to do GIS work. And not that we're taking away from the engineering side, but even technologies in the engineering side, the surveying, a lot of it was the survey work. But currently our survey work has and invite anyone who wants to come and learn about our survey work that we do. They have a robotic total station scene, so it's actually kind of a robot that follows, where you used to have to have a person stand there and move the instrument around. It follows you as you go, so you can. It's turned really a 3-man person and a 3-man crew into a 2-man crew. So we can afford to have that second intern reallocated to the GIS side to help us with a lot of the mapping things. They did a lot of work with the emerald ash borer and the ash tree inventories and things like that last summer. We have a lot of things that we have planned this year as well, some of it having to do with our comp plan update that's coming up here that will really kick off in 27. But a lot of the black work or leg work this summer, doing some of the mapping and things that we need to do for that. So for the foreseeable future, I see it continuing.
Excellent. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Copey? No? Okay, thank you so much. Thanks. All right, item 6A, the 2025 Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program. Ms. Talon.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council, for the opportunity to present on the city's MS4 general permit and associated stormwater program. I'm going to present specifically on the 2025 activities. So MS4 means Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And this is a system of streets, curbs, and gutters, storm sewer, and any other infrastructure that conveys stormwater runoff into the waters of the states. And waters of the states are wetlands and lakes of certain sizes specifically. These MS4s are owned by a public entity such as the state or the city or the county. And so MS4s within Minnesota must satisfy the requirements of the MS4 general permit. And this permit is issued by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, but it stems from a federal requirement in the Clean Water Act. So the purpose of the MS4 general permit is to reduce the amount of pollutants entering state waters from the MS4. So examples of stormwater pollutants are listed here. So that includes litter, sediment, phosphorus that's generated from fertilizers, leaves, and grass clippings, chloride from winter salt application, bacteria, and hazardous waste such as oil, gas, and antifreeze. So the purpose of the permit is accomplished through the development and implementation of what's called a Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program, or SWIP for short. This is made up of 6 components that are listed here, and each of these 6 components are called minimum control measures. And there is an additional requirement in the MS4 general permit for those MS4s that flow to an impaired water body. So we do have total maximum daily load, which is what that's called. We do have those requirements as well. So I'll go through each of the minimum control measures and what makes up each of these. So minimum control measure, or MCM1, there's a lot of acronyms in stormwater, is public education and outreach. So this program entails distributing educational materials to inform the public of the impacts of stormwater discharge and what the public can do to reduce the amount of pollutants that get to these water bodies. So we accomplish this by our website, our newsletter, and we utilize the White Bear Press quite often, and our social media accounts. And I even see some on our kiosks out here in the front. We also participate in outreach activities such as water-related events and workshops. And we partner extensively with watershed management organizations and others to accomplish this public education and outreach. So we're not each doing our own thing, so it's just a much more efficient way of educating the public. And this shows a couple of posts from 2025 on our Facebook page. So one is a rain garden maintenance workshop that one of the Rice Creek Watershed District was conducting. And then there was another educational post about keeping leaves and grass clippings out of the street. So our website has a couple of locations where there's stormwater-related information. One is under Your Government and Engineering, and that's more of the permitted requirements for stormwater management. And the other is a Yard and Garden under Services and Environment. This is an example of a page from our spring and our fall 2025 newsletter. So in the spring, this example shows the Adopt a Drain program that we promote and yard waste disposal options, because we want to try to keep that yard waste from getting into the street and into the lakes and wetlands. And in the fall, we focus a lot, again, on yard waste disposal and on pet waste, proper pet waste pickup and disposal, and salt, reducing salt use in the winter. So our Environmental Advisory Commission hosts a Environmental Resources Expo each year on the last night of Market Fest. And there were 14 exhibitors in 2025, and they always include at least 2 or 3 exhibitors that focus on water. So this photo shows the Vadnais Lake Area Water Management Organization, who we partner with on a lot of different projects. Minimum Control Measure 2 is public participation and involvement. So this minimum control measure requires us to provide one opportunity each year for the public to provide input on the SWIP. So that is what we were here for tonight with the public hearing. There's also an opportunity for the public to provide input on our website as well. And then we also provide other opportunities for public participation and involvement, such as the Adopt a Drain program. So we promote this program, and we are actually a member of the Metro Watershed Partners who host this program. We've been a member since 2019, and as of 2025, there's been 313 drains adopted within the cities, or within this city. And the participants in this program are asked to sweep up leaves and grass clippings and fertilizer out of the street so it doesn't get into the storm drain, and then report on what they have collected if possible. And then Metro Watershed Partners also gives us an annual report. So you see one of the pages of that annual report on the screen. Another public participation option that we provide is we partner with Birch Lake Elementary, Rotary Club, and VLAMO. We've been doing this for the past 3 years now, I think. And so we host a field day at Rotary Nature Preserve because we've been doing a lot of restoration work at the park. And so we thought it would be fun to have the elementary kids out there and teach them about the restoration work and the importance of clean water. So in 2025, we hosted the event on May 29th for the kindergarten through second graders. And the activity stations included a macroinvertebrate lab, a nature walk, and an edible campfire and a book reading. And we'll be doing that again actually next week, too. So the Environmental Advisory Commission has been hosting a buckthorn removal event now each year. This will be the 3rd year coming up this fall. And they partner with Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District to help clear buckthorn around Hanlow's Pond. This past year, there were 17 volunteers, which is a lot of people, it's a great turnout. So those volunteers included the Watershed District Citizens Advisory Committee, the Park Advisory Commission, and of course, Environmental Advisory Commission members and residents. So MCM3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination, or IDDE for short. So an illicit discharge is any discharge, either accidental or on purpose, into a storm sewer system or directly into a river, stream, or wetland or lake that is not composed of just stormwater. So this program, our implementation of this program, so we have an ordinance. We train staff and residents to identify and report illicit discharges. We identify priority areas where it's more likely an illicit discharge could occur. And then there's procedures for locating and responding to spills. Here's a few examples of illicit discharges, and a lot of these pictures are from actual reports. So concrete wash water, oil or fuel on the street or in the water body. Sediment from construction sites is a very common one. Pet waste, fertilizer, and grass clippings and leaves in the street. Those are also very common illicit discharges. So residents, we educate residents and staff to report illicit discharges by either calling 911 if it's an emergency. For example, if there's a car accident and there's a fuel spill, you would call 911 for that. And the non-emergencies, such as the grass clippings in the street, you could either call the engineering department, or we have an online form for people to report that. And that's under Services Report a Problem. And then there's more information online, which is what's on the screen, in the engineering department under Stormwater Management. So in 2025, there were 14 reports of illicit discharge. I've listed those here. Not all of them ended up being an illicit discharge, but we still investigate them just to make sure. MCM4 is construction site runoff control. So we have a construction site stormwater runoff control program to reduce pollutants from construction activity. So like I was mentioning, sediment off a construction site is a very common occurrence. So our program has an erosion and sediment control ordinance. We conduct site plan reviews. So engineering staff and community development staff review plans, site plans that come in. There's site inspections, and mainly that's the building department that does the weekly site inspections for erosion control. And then there are procedures for non-compliance. That again, the building department runs that. So this shows on the left improper erosion control. So there's a silt fence there that's supposed to be buried and keep the sediment on site, and that has failed. And then on the right, there's proper sediment control. So there's another silt fence, but it's keeping that loose soil from getting into the more natural space. So as I mentioned, the building department does the inspections, and they're certified for erosion and sediment control. MCM5 is post-construction runoff management. So this program requires permanent stormwater treatment facilities for new and reconstructed private projects and city projects as well. So we have an ordinance and we have stormwater design standards. We conduct a site plan review. That is mainly done in the engineering department. And there's a long-term maintenance agreement that is required as part of this. So this photo shows the Wildwood row homes. So they were required to do stormwater treatment. And so they decided to put in a biofiltration basin. So we conducted a review of that to make sure it meets our stormwater standards. And then I actually went out on this particular site to inspect the permanent stormwater feature when it was done. MCM6 is pollution prevention and good housekeeping. That is mainly public works. So Paul touched on a few of these items. So city facilities, landscape maintenance, street sweeping, winter street maintenance, storm sewer inspections and maintenance, and employee training. So for example, street sweeping is a really good way to remove items like leaves and grass clippings out of the street so it doesn't wash it into the lakes and wetlands. So the city sweeper is a vacuum sweeper, so that removes fine particles as well as the larger leaves. And they, as Paul mentioned, they sweep the streets in the spring and fall. And we also have done an enhanced sweeping partnership with Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District, which means they would hire a private contractor to sweep the streets in addition to what the city does. So just to pick up even more debris in priority areas that the Watershed District has. And then winter street maintenance, the main goal for this is to reduce the amount of salt use while still keeping the streets safe. So the public works staff attends annual smart salt training, and they calibrate their spreaders annually, and I'm sure there's a lot of other methods that they use as well to reduce the salt use. And the sewer department, they are charged with cleaning out the treatment structures that the city owns. So we own various swirl separators, sump manholes, underground infiltration pipes, pretreatment structures, and an iron hench sand filter. So they come in with their vac truck and remove the sediment out of these facilities. And I'm sure that's a much more exciting thing for them to do, right? So we also own 6 rain gardens, and we contract out with Natural Shore Technologies to maintain those because there's a lot of native plant maintenance and expertise required for that. And so we do contract that out. They come out 4 times a year to maintain these rain gardens. So engineering keeps that contract with them. So impaired waters, so we do flow, our MS4 flows to impaired waters. And so we have to meet the requirements of the MPCA impaired waters. So the purpose is to restore impaired lakes for specific pollutants, so nutrients, sediment, chloride, bacteria, et cetera. So the goal is to reduce those to the point where it isn't impaired anymore. So the MPCA created this list of impaired waters that do not meet specific water quality pollutant standards. We call that the 303D list. And MS4s, like the city, were assigned allowable pollutant loadings, and they call that a waste load allocation. What that means is that is the amount, the maximum amount of a pollutant that you can discharge to a lake and keep it off the impaired list. So we have waste load allocations assigned to 5 lakes for nutrient impairments. So East and West Goose, Peltier and Centerville, Wilkinson, and Lake St. Croix. And good news is 2 of the lakes that we used to have waste load allocations assigned for are now delisted, which means they meet the water quality standards for nutrients. So that's a huge deal, and it's because of all these projects over the years that the city and the watershed districts have installed. We also have waste load allocations for bacteria impairment for Rice Creek and Lambert Creek, and chloride impairment for Coleman Lake and South Long Lake. So this is trending more to, we're looking at more and more chloride impairments in the future. So the city's assigned a waste load allocation for nutrients. We need to report any reduction progress to the MPCA annually. And reporting includes what types of projects that we've installed within the watershed of that impaired water body. So on the right, I've included some examples of the types of projects that we could implement. So we could install rain gardens. The larger basins are called infiltration basins. There's filter media that you can use, which is iron enhanced sand is a very common one. You could install a stormwater use system, so which collects stormwater and then it's used for irrigation. You can construct a stormwater pond, or you can use alum or spent line applications directly in the lake. So for the delisted lakes, we no longer have to report progress to the MPCA, but we do continue to partner with the watershed districts and others to still install projects to continue to keep that water quality high. And this is an example in the lower right of a rain garden that we installed in 2018. And the calculation shows that that reduces 0.4 pounds per year of phosphorus. So we have a program that'll calculate that based on the amount of impervious surfaces going to it and the types of impervious surfaces. So in 2025, 1 rain garden was installed as part of our street reconstruction project. So we offer a voluntary rain garden program for street reconstruction projects each year. And so 1 was installed last year, and it's estimated to reduce pollutant loading to Bald Eagle Lake of 0.25 pounds per year of phosphorus and 72 pounds per year of sediment. So the city partnered with the Vadnais Lake Area Water Management Organization and Ramsey County in 2025 to build a project at the sports center, and it's a swale. So think of it as a really long, narrow rain garden. And the location of it's shown on the right aerial photo in yellow, and then the arrow is pointing in the direction of where the photo was taken in the middle. So this treats stormwater runoff from the very large parking lot and from a portion of South Birch Lake Boulevard. So we have a maintenance agreement with Vlamo for 50% of the cost for each year, but we will have the contract for that maintenance, and then we'll invoice the watershed. And we will be putting up educational signs at this location because that is required as part of the grant that was received. We're also partnering with Vlamo for a wetland restoration project at Rotary Wetland. So this just in general improves watershed health and also wildlife value. So this is was the first year of a 5-year project, and Vlamo was awarded a Conservation Partners Legacy Grant from the DNR for $110,250 for this project. And this photo is the Vlamo board tour, which occurred on August 5th, 2025. So back in 2023, we partnered with Vlamo to do an Oak Knoll Pond spent lime demonstration project, because spent lime from the water treatment plant that Paul was talking about has been shown to actually remove phosphorus from the water column. And so we wanted to try it. It was tried on a smaller pond, so we wanted to size that up and try it on a larger pond. So Oak Knoll Pond was the chosen one pond. And Oak Knoll Pond outlets to Goose Lake, which is impaired for nutrients. So if this project was successful, it would also help reduce nutrients to Goose Lake. So on the right is a map that shows the storm sewer outlet from Oak Knoll Pond into Goose Lake. So we've had a couple years of monitoring, so that chart at the top shows the phosphorus concentration has been reduced by 47%. The bottom phosphorus concentration also by 47%. And the Secchi dish transparency, which is just a little disc you put down in the water and determine the depth at which you can't see it anymore. So that transparency improved, so it got clearer by 127%. So it has been very effective so far. So we've been really happy with the results of that. And it uses a byproduct of water softening as well. So we're assigned the waste load allocation for bacteria and chloride, so we will need to have an ordinance requiring pet owners to remove and properly dispose of waste, specifically on city property. We do have language in our ordinance for that already. We also have to have an ordinance requiring proper salt storage at private commercial, industrial, and institutional and industrial facilities. So we will be bringing that forward to council for your consideration, hopefully in the next couple months. And then we also need to educate the public on proper pet waste and salt disposal. And that's all I have, and I just want to reiterate, I have this slide up every year, but it still holds true. Partners are the key to the success of stormwater programs. So this is a photo of the Rotary Club members that I've been working with. They're fantastic. I work with all the water management organizations. We're in 4 of them. Ramsey County, the Environmental Commission, the Parks Commission, other departments. So it takes a village, right, to get these projects done. So any questions?
I have a question, Connie. So, and actually I was going to ask it after Paul, but so it kind of combines both of you. So I know that we truck a lot of our spent lime away, so, gas prices and trucking the lime. And I was actually going to ask you, before I heard that it improves the lake, is there anything we can do with our spent lime and keep it here instead of driving it somewhere else and getting rid of it? So is that what you were using?
Yeah, we were
to improve
using
the lake?
Our city's spent lime.
Right.
Yeah, because they were looking at either City of St. Paul for a source or us.
Right.
And so we had a different slurry thickness, I guess, and it was closer. And so that's what we used in Oak Knoll Pond, was our spent lime.
So that's really, could be something in the future we do more often, huh? And not have to truck it somewhere. Maybe.
Maybe. Mayor, members of the council, to answer your question a little bit, so kind of the typical routine to get rid of the spent lime is to process it in such a fashion that can be used for, by the farming community,
Right.
things like that. The issue with it is that depending on so like for our spring clean out, we actually have a outfit an agricultural outfit that comes in and uses that lime, so we get rid of it. We don't send it to St. Paul. It works in the spring because they haven't planted yet. They haven't, gotten the crops ready to go. So this time of the year, it works for them. You get in the summer months and you have crops growing, there's no need for that.
Right.
We don't have the ability to store the lime slurry. So it's kind of lime water
Much of it.
mix. So what happens at a facility like St. Paul's is they decant and compress that in like lime cakes. And that can be used at a later date by the farmers and whatnot. But so we would have to have a way to either store the slurry or have our own decanter and press in order to make those cakes with. So there's options that we're looking at to help reduce that. Who knows, sometime in the future, if we have to rebuild the plant or upgrades to the plant, maybe that is an operation that is added. We'll have to look at those cost benefits that, is it truly worthwhile long-term or not to have our own. So constantly looking, this is a small overall volume, but if the pilot were to grow legs, there's not that many. There's only a handful of St. Paul, a few other communities that do lime softening currently. So there could be a market to, at least in the summer months. And our water usage is up in the summer months, so we use more lime in the summer months. So it's actually an opportune time if that program grows legs, and then we can actually get it out more in the metro area with other water management organizations or communities doing it.
Excellent, excellent. Does anyone else have any questions? Councilmember Gurrola.
Thank you very much for the presentation and all your work, especially the swale project. I love seeing that. I was just wondering, you talked about the lakes that became delisted. Are there any other lakes we should be concerned about that could go the opposite and appear on the list? I get you can't say, but have you found in prior years, okay, we delist some, but then there's some that become added, or are we moving more in the direction, or what does it take to keep them off the list on our side without just replacing them with others?
Mayor, members of council, the first question is yes, they get added all the time. So for example, Silver Lake, that's in the Valley Branch Watershed District on the far southeast corner of the city. It's actually in the city south of us. That is now impaired. It was not before, but there hasn't been a waste load allocation assigned yet, so we don't have to report on that at this point. So yes, they get added all the time. And the ones that are delisted or the ones that were never impaired to begin with, like Birch Lake, we're always looking for projects to remove more phosphorus to keep them off the impaired waters list. The chloride is a much more challenging pollutant to deal with. And so you can't just put in a filter and filter out salt out of water. So that's, they're working on that. The MPCA now has staff to deal with the salt issues and education and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that answered all of your questions. Okay.
Go ahead.
I know that as an alternative to salt, the county really tried to push, was it grit? Is that what it was called? Or the rocks that for chicken food, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And the county invested in that to give it out for free for people to use as an alternative. Is that a program you think will continue, or is that something we as the city could look into to try to promote our residents to use that as opposed to salt or chloride?
Mayor, members of council, so that was a Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District driven program for residents instead of salting their driveways and sidewalks. I can talk with the watershed districts, and I think some of the other watershed districts actually came into the program, Blamo and Rice Creek. And so I think working with them, because they may have the budget for it at this point, just working with them and having them promote that and just encouraging that again. So, yeah. And I think years ago, the street, I think they used to sand streets, didn't they, Paul? But they got away from that.
Yeah, so Mayor, members of the council, so the poultry grit that you're talking about works well on a residential scale where, people just sweep it off into their yards, into their grass, and it kind of just goes away, right? If we use, years ago, it's kind of, that was one of the first things that we used was, sand on the roads to help add traction. However, that grit all gets washed into the storm sewer and in the lakes and causes a different type of impairment. So the industry trend went to salt because at the time there weren't the chloride impairments that Ms. Talon's talking about, but we kind of replaced one issue with another issue now. However, the bigger industry is looking at different things that is, non-chlorides or things. We actually use treated salt. So we use a kind of a non-pollutant treatment on it to help make it stick better to the roadway. It works to a lower temperature. You have to put less down. Connie mentioned, our calibration of our equipment, really watching where and how much we use salt. A low-speed little road doesn't need salt, but maybe the intersection with Highway 61 does. So we really focus on where that salt is needed to help reduce that overall volume that we put down each winter. But we keep following industry trends. There's all kinds of smart people out there that are looking at alternatives to actual road salt.
Thank you. And I appreciate clarifying for the city. I was mainly asking for the residents, like you said, too, but I like your idea of asking more from the watershed to see if they can help support us in promoting that. But I know it's always evolving issues like you referenced, too. So thank you.
All right, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up to a public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing. I have no lists on my sign-up sheet. However, would anyone like to speak for the public hearing and ask Ms. Talon questions? Going once, public hearing, going twice. No, okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Talon, for everything. And I know that people sometimes think it's a lot and it's a lot to process and hear, but I mean, the lake is our most important resource here, and we want to make sure we keep it clean and around for the next generation. So I appreciate all this, and I encourage people to get involved in it. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 7, unfinished business. There's nothing scheduled. Item 8, new business. 8A, the first reading of the ordinance amending zoning code regarding tobacco shops and cigar lounges. Mr. Lindahl.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. As you mentioned, the request before you is the first reading of a proposed ordinance. The applicant in this case is Founders Cigar Company. The text amendment that's before you tonight for the first reading would add 2 conditional uses to the MXD, or mixed use downtown zone. Those uses are listed as tobacco product shop and premium cigar lounge. The ordinance also before you adds a definition for premium cigar lounge. The applicant while the text amendment is an overall amendment to the zoning code, the applicant has indicated an interest in a property at 2163rd Street. As part of the rest of my presentation, we'll look at the text amendment standards for review, some history about the tobacco zoning and licensing standard development for White Bear Lake, how some other cities look at this issue, and then just to note, both Planning Commission and staff have recommended denial of this request. So in looking at the zoning code text amendment, just these are the issues that we typically look at for a zoning code text amendment. Generally look at whether it's the proposed amendment is promoting the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. More specifically, we look at whether or not it's in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan, whether or not it corrects an error or inconsistency, or it will help meet a challenge of a changing condition. We also look at consistency with the zone that it's looking to go into, and then other applicable city ordinances. In this case, we've noted licensing, because there not only is there a zoning component to this, but a business licensing for tobacco shops. But just to be very clear, the only item before the council tonight is the zoning portion of what I'm talking about right now. And then finally, could the proposed amendment cause depreciation in the area which is proposed? And those are the city standards related to zoning text amendment. In this case, we considered other factors, which is conformance with the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. So just to give you a quick run through of the history of the city's development of both zoning and licensing standards for tobacco shops. Back in 2023, the city developed passed an ordinance related to licensing standards for tobacco shops. That included a definition with some basic components you see on the screen here: an entrance directly to the street, 21 plus only, and 90% of the revenue from tobacco-related sales. It limited the number to 10 within the city. Currently, we have 5 licensed tobacco product shops. There are a number of other tobacco licenses, but they're for other businesses that only have a small portion of their tobacco sales. So there just maybe more in your mind than just that 5 that we're talking about. And then the licensing standards put in specific standards for sampling. And those standards included, again, for just the city of White Bear Lake, our licensing standards for sampling, that there would be no tables or seating and no wait staff in those areas. It would be limited to only free samples, so kind of mimicking the idea of when typically you go to a grocery store and they're handing out samples on a Saturday. It's just a portion of a product that they're promoting or have on sale, and they're trying to entice you to buy. That the sampling is incidental to the retail operations of the tobacco sales, and then that there is no external signage promoting the sampling. So again, those are the standards in the licensing side of what the city standards that were created in August of 2023. Those are separate from the zoning standards that we're talking about now, but just again in the sense of history. So then in the following month, in September of 2023, we followed up with zoning standards to go along for tobacco product or tobacco shops. That included a definition that basically mimicked the one in the licensing standard, 21 plus, and entrance to the street. I just mentioned in the last slide. It limited the location of tobacco shops to a conditional use in the B4 general business zone, which was under our old zoning code, okay? And then it specifically made effort to prohibit those uses in the neighborhood commercial areas or in the downtown commercial area. It also established buffers of these uses from some specific activities. So tobacco shops couldn't be located within 1,000 feet of a school or 500 feet from a daycare, residential treatment facility, or public park feature where children are present. And then, so those were the standards that we developed in tandem in August and September of '23. And then I'm sure everyone remembers we went through then an extensive process to look at our entire zoning code. And so 2 years later, almost exactly, we wrapped up the entire review of the zoning code. And we did re-look at and reaffirm the standards then, just this past, basically last fall, okay? And so as part of that discussion, staff would note that the council stressed that standards we should try to have consistency between the standards for off-sale liquor, tobacco, and cannabis. We listed the use under retail sales, and we assigned it to the MXS or mixed-use suburban zone in the new code. not to get into a whole lot of detail with this, but generally speaking, the B4 zone in the old code and the MXS zone in the new code are basically in the same locations of the city. Our higher capacity intersections that draw more regional kinds of retail to the city. So keeping them in those areas, and examples would be Century and 694, White Bear and 694, and 96 and 35E. And so limiting those to the areas where regional commerce occurs and keeping them away from neighborhood serving retail areas in the more core areas of the city, and then also in the downtown. And then it's also worth noting that as part of that process, the council had a specific ask to add a tobacco/dispensary into the Summit Liquor Strip Mall at E and White Bear Avenue, and as part of the overall zoning update. It wasn't really a specific, it wasn't its own application, but it was a request where that property owner came and talked to the council during the zoning update process and made that request. And at that time, the council decided not to rezone or change the standards for that property because it wouldn't match the MXS zone. And it also wouldn't have met the buffering standards in that location. So again, hopefully that's a real quick summary of several years of history, and happy to answer questions when we get to that. We also had some conversation both with the applicant as they were applying and then throughout the review process with the Planning Commission, what other cities are doing related to this issue. And so the three communities that came up were Blaine, Maple Grove, and what was referred to in the conversation is Stillwater, but given its location, it's actually in the corporate limits of Oak Park Heights. So just to, again, quickly summarize this, both Blaine and Maple Grove basically treat these things similarly. They allow them as a permitted use. They've defined them as a tobacco shop and then have a general statement that says they must comply with the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. They leave the enforcement of that up to the Minnesota Department of Health, and again, which is rightly so. It's a state level regulation and the city is deferring that part of enforcement to MDH. In the case of Oak Park Heights, they allow it as a permitted use, but they don't have any specific zoning or use or definition standards for it, and they just consider it retail sales. They don't have buffers that they apply to that, and they don't have licensing or sampling standards. So they just treat it, again, in their community, they've made a decision to treat it generally as retail sales. So then we take a look at kind of the city standard kind of things in the analysis that staff did. So there's a lot more detail about this in your staff report. Be happy to answer any questions, but just in a summary level, again, we looked at, does this comply with the comprehensive plan? So we looked at the goals and policies for the downtown land use category, and that encompasses a broad range of uses and intensities, including residential, commercial, and institutional. It is intended that development contribute to the pedestrian scale, walkable environment that is already present in downtown. And it talks about the idea of downtown as the heart of the community and the types of uses and mixes that go along and make that up as that kind of iconic feature of the community. And then we looked at the zoning district standards, and again, you'll see some similar kind of language here carrying through the zoning that was developed. And so walkable storefronts providing shopping, dining, and services for residents and visitors. Upper stories accommodating mix of uses such as residential and office. The tobacco product shops, again, what we found were currently prohibited in that zone based on past council review and policy development. And then that the zoning code amendment in 2023 created those tobacco product shop standards and reaffirmed as part of the zoning update. And so then also, we looked at consistency with the tobacco product shop buffers that were established. And so even if the use was approved in this case, the buffering standards that are in place wouldn't allow it in the location that the applicant is considering. Again, the specific location isn't part of this review right now. We are really just talking about what standards, if any, should be in place. And so again, those standards, 1,000 feet from schools, 500 feet from daycare, residential facilities, or park features. And then so not only did we look at the zoning standards and its consistency, but then again, consistency with other city regulations, and that gets into the licensing standards. And so again, the White Bear Lake has specific standards for sampling that talks about no tables, seating, or wait staff, limited to free samples, not a product that you purchase, that is incidental to the retail sales, and that there would be no external signage. And then we looked at the question of whether or not there could be depreciation in the area related to this request. And while that is a difficult thing to determine before something happens, the things we considered was whether or not it's compatible with surrounding land uses, consistency with other zoning and licensing standards, and then the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. We'll talk more about that in a second, and the possibility of that producing negative impacts on the surrounding uses or zone. So that, what I just talked about really looks at what the zoning standards are, or what the standards the city has for reviewing a zoning change. Now we're also looking at the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. And so that act prohibits smoking in, it says it shall not be permitted in and no one shall smoke in a public place, at a public meeting, or in a place of employment, or in public transportation. And so it's pretty all-encompassing. The standard, the exception that's in here for sampling is specific to tobacco product shops, and it says that customers may light, heat, or activate tobacco products for the purposes of sampling tobacco products in that location. It doesn't go into detail of more detail about the product or how you do, where you do it, and those kinds of things. Now, the city, under its licensing standards, has created some other standards that are more specific for licensing. But the applicant's position is that there's an exception in the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act that allows sampling to happen. So questions for the city council to consider. Really, this is just kind of a summary of the way staff looked at this. But in your discussion tonight, does the text amendment do these things? Promote the public health, safety, and welfare of the community? Is it in conformance with the comprehensive plan? Does it correct an error or inconsistency or challenge that's in place from a changing condition? Does it conform with the MXD zoning standards generally, or to be thinking about next steps, should we go this way, the licensing standards? Could there be depreciation in the area if we make these changes? And then does it conform with the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act? And so the findings that staff made, basically looking at those things, came to the conclusion of that we should recommend denial based on those things, and in looking at not only our own zoning standards and looking at other communities, but in discussions with the city attorney on the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act, and reaching out to the Minnesota Department of Health in Ramsey County about their view of this use and the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. So that's a lot to cover in this recommendation. Again, what you have before you here tonight is conducting of the first reading of the zoning text amendment. The second reading, should council choose to move it along, would be on May 26th. And at this point, based on the recommendation from the Planning Commission for denial, we would bring forward a resolution at that second reading for denial of the ordinance, pending comment and direction from the council. And so with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. All right, council, who has questions?
Okay, Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Walsh.
I don't know if I have any questions. I'm looking for, I assume you're looking for some input. Some observations. You're right, that's a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts. Maybe I do have a question. The decision you're making, the text change is on a zoning change for tobacco product shops coming into downtown. So all of your discussion, all of your decisions, the recommendations from city, what the Planning Commission, discussed, is that full tobacco product shop in the downtown area. Is that the right assumption I'm making here, looking at what you just presented?
Mayor, members of the council, yes, but that's also based on that we processed what the applicant applied for.
Right. So I guess that'd be where I'm at. So I would not support a tobacco product shop in downtown White Bear Lake. I think the zoning is appropriate. It's right. It's good. It fits. And so there's lots of moving parts here, but let's just take it from the retail premium cigar shop. Forget the lounge for a minute.
Right.
If I'll say where I stand, I do not support a tobacco product shop or just opening up the zoning, with this amendment that's proposed, so that any tobacco product shop could come in, in addition to this premium cigar shop. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't vote for that. But I think it's worth considering, and I think the more narrow analysis of a premium cigar retail shop, I think does fit in White Bear Lake. I think it does fit the other uses. It fits in with the downtown vibe, bars, restaurants, shops, high-end premium cigars. So that if there was a way to do that, I would support that. And I don't know exactly how to do that, and I have to listen to my colleagues if it's worth even pursuing. But that's a more narrow thing to just say premium cigar shop fits downtown. Is that text amendment? It would create a new entity, basically, a new thing to zone that would not allow any tobacco product shop to come in. That is something I would be worth considering. The lounge, if you separate out, maybe we can stop there and just talk about that for a while, but the lounge is a heavier lift, a more difficult lift. On its face, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not sure we can figure out how to do it, and make it fit. It's interesting that the Clean Air Act is in play, because I've actually been in the Maple Grove location a few times, and for years. And obviously, the state hasn't made a move to shut those down. It doesn't look on its face that it complies, but they haven't shut them down. So it's I don't know what to do with that. I mean, it'd be no risk to us as a city. It'd be a risk to the business owner if they want to risk if we somehow found a way to permit that they wanted to open it, and then someday the state said, we're going to shut these down. That would be the risk to the business owner, maybe not so much to us, but that's a whole separate issue. But I think the first discussion, maybe if there's any interest at all, and I don't even know if there's, because one of the beauties of our council is that we don't pre-confer these things. I have no idea what my colleagues think on this issue, and no one wanted to go first, so I decided to go first again. But I'm just telling you, on my gut, the premium cigar shop fits in downtown. I would be a customer. But not tobacco shops. So I agree with your assessment. If you're saying general tobacco product shops come in, I would say no, I agree with your assessment. But if there's a way to do a premium cigar shop, I'd be interested in that. So I've talked enough.
Isn't a cigar shop a tobacco shop? I'm confused. I don't know.
Okay, well, Madam Mayor, I would say, of course, but we would have to define it differently, a more narrow definition, a very narrow definition of a premium cigar shop. There is a state definition of premium cigars in state statute. It's a hand-rolled cigar, more than $2 in price. So you can start there. No paraphernalia, no glass case, no vaping, stuff like that, no. Very narrow premium cigars. I imagine some products that would go with that. You can talk to the applicant, I guess, but, a cutter, lighters, maybe. But no, very narrow. So I would say, yes, tobacco for sure, but it would, if the council wanted to do something, that's what I would support. A very narrow, new type of tobacco store that could be a yes, whereas the more broader one, I would say, is still a no.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember West.
So we voted previously not to increase the number of tobacco, cannabis sellers in the downtown area. And I think it just, for health reasons as well as I don't think it really comports with kind of the family atmosphere that we want. So I would not be in favor of, especially pulling out and creating a new category. Honestly, I've been an advocate for not smoking due to health reasons since I was a little kid. I was the bane to my dad's existence for a while there, and I have no interest, whether there's concern or not, about follow-through in us not following the Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act. I think it's important that we continue to follow it. We already denied somebody for this very, this very thing. They were not in the correct zoning area, and they were outside, within the buffer zone. And so, I can't see, saying okay for these folks and not for that person. And once we do it for one, then, why wouldn't we do it for other people? And I think it changes a lot of things in the code that we put together very thoughtfully. And I still support the code, so.
Thank you. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. This is first reading, and I'll defer a decision for the next meeting, but 3 questions that pop up for me. Mr. Lindahl, I'm having trouble imagining how we would create a premium cigar zoning, a shop definition without opening it up to, without that falling inside of the prohibited general smoke or cigarette, tobacco shop. Do you see a way of doing that?
Mayor and members of the council, I would agree with you that just off the cuff, I'm having trouble thinking of a way to do that because the tobacco product is the common denominator to all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, could the applicant provide information that, with a definition that may meet the concerns of, meet the concerns of the council? We can pose that question to the applicant. So, but then we'd have to, consult with the city attorney on how that kind of aligns with state law and those limitations. And so.
Okay, thank you. So that's a challenge we would have to figure out. Second question. This council and I did not support the buffering, the buffering distances that the council otherwise 4-1 adopted. I'm having trouble imagining how we would, given the proximity to existing daycares, schools, et cetera, I'm having trouble picturing how any location in the downtown area would avoid the buffering requirements. And so in order to make this possible, not only would we have to find the definition that works, question 1, but we'd also have to it seems to me we would have to take up the buffering conversation and changing the distance from any location in the downtown. And I've looked at those maps. I can't picture how that works. Am I right in thinking that a change in our buffering standards would be required in order to site anything downtown, even if we could pass test number 1? Or am I thinking wrongly?
Mayor, members of the council, no, I would agree with you that with your thinking, that the buffers would need to be reduced and maybe eliminated.
Okay. That's an option available to the council if we should choose to take that up. We've used at least 2 prior occasions to not do that, not for tobacco, for cannabis, but that would have to be a second test. Now, the third one, so Maple Grove and Blaine defer enforcement of the Clean Air Act to Clean Indoor Air Act to defer that to the state Department of Health. It's a state standard, state regulation. I get it. I think in our packet, we received communication both from a city attorney as well as from statement, I think it was from MDH. It was a state source that says sampling and so forth in such a venue is not consistent with the standards of, and yet I think Member Walsh rightly says, okay, we've got it. Why is no action being taken? I'll raise a first question to you, Mr. Lindahl, and then I'll toss it to Mr. Anderson. Is it your understanding, is staff understanding and saying, your opinion is that the proposal does not comport with the requirements of the Minnesota Indoor Clean Air Act? What's staff's reading of that?
Yep.
Setting aside the enforcement question, how do you read the liability conversation?
Yep. Mayor, members of the council, I think there are the 2 parts of that would be staff's recommendation to you based on it not complying, is that it does not comply. It appears not to comply.
Fair.
That's based on feedback from Minnesota Department of Health and the city attorney.
Okay.
So those 2 things.
So let me toss to you, Mr. Anderson. You wrote a memo. I read it. It makes sense to me. But so the anomaly of not enforcing against 2 state. Now I don't. Okay. Do they actually have premium tobacco shops in those 2 locations that are up and functioning?
I've been in one, yes.
Okay.
It's a cigar store.
Is there what interpretation should, or what meaning should this council put on the fact that 2 other communities have taken such action, made a determination, well, I guess they've avoided making a determination about compliance with the Indoor Air Act, but no enforcement on a state level. Is there any guidance that you would offer us in terms of how we interpret those issues and the absence of action to date?
Sure, Mayor, members of the council. So, it's interesting because what I understand they do in Blaine and Maple Grove is they allow what Councilmember Walsh proposed, which is not what's being requested by the applicants, and that's for a subcategory of a tobacco retail shop.
Okay.
That's a premium cigar shop, a retail establishment. What this council is being asked to do, what the applicant has proposed, is to allow tobacco product shops, which is a more broad category in the downtown area, and then add a second conditional use, which is a premium cigar lounge. To me, that seems different from a cigar retail shop with incidental sampling. The way I understand it, well, and in fact, I've looked at Blaine's definition of what they allow. Blaine allows cigar lounges, which are simply defined as a tobacco product shop limited to cigars. It's not a lounge. It's not somewhere where people have 24/7 access to sit around and smoke cigars, which is what these applicants have requested. That, to me, is a significant distinguishing factor here about what we're talking about. And so the question that was posed to me by staff, and which you saw in the packet, was simply, does the request from the applicants, in my viewpoint, if they were allowed to do that, would it adhere to the Clean Indoor Air Act? And because they're asking for something which, in my view, is totally different from a cigar retail shop, based on the analysis, it seems to me that it doesn't. And it also seems to align with the Department of Health's analysis and information that I've seen from the Department of Health, from Ramsey County, from health authorities that are more in the business, if you will, of enforcing the Clean Indoor Air Act. And what I'll also add is, before you, I think you used the term, those cities deferred enforcement to MDH, but keep in mind that the city, regardless of whether we say, whether we defer it or not, we have no enforcement authority over the Clean Indoor Air Act. That is entirely left to the Department of Health. And they can delegate some of that stuff to the local health authorities, but in Ramsey County, that's the county, that's not the city of White Bear Lake. And so, you know, the only thing that theoretically the city of White Bear Lake could enforce in the Clean Indoor Air Act is, I think, if someone lights something up inside, if someone were to light a cigarette or a cigar in this room right now, the police could cite them for a petty misdemeanor. But we're talking about business enforcement, we're talking civil penalties in excess of $5,000 or $10,000, very significant enforcement mechanism that is available to the Department of Health, not necessarily to the city. But what those cities did do is, based on those definitions, they say a cigar lounge. I stopped a little quickly when I read the Blaine definition. They define a cigar lounge as a licensed tobacco product shop limited to cigars and pipes and operated in compliance with the Clean Indoor Air Act, meaning we're only allowing something that is allowed under state law. And I think the reason they do that is for a CYA, to say that, to prove to MDH that they're not intentionally allowing anything that might violate the Clean Indoor Air Act, but whether MDH is out enforcing, I mean, they're complaint-based enforcement. So maybe they haven't had complaints, or frankly, maybe there's such a gray area about where sampling becomes more than sampling, and it's hard to enforce. I don't know. However, what I do know is a 24/7 cigar lounge seems to fall pretty outside of that gray area, and you know, in a category of its own, is something that likely wouldn't pass the test.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents.
Fair enough. So, Member Walsh, tossing it back to you, the idea that you could support, or at least would give consideration to, is a retail location where a consumer, a person over 21, consumer, legal buyer, could walk in, view product on the shelf, perhaps watch it being made. You're picturing that narrow definition without sampling, without, men enjoying cognac and their cigar in a glassed-in area, whatever that smoking experience looks like. What do you have in mind in terms of something that you could get in back of?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I could. I think so. I think the narrow, I think you'd have to have an imagination for this. I mean, it's something new. It's something different. I think the bottom line is, I consider cigars different. And if I can't convince others, that's fine. I mean, and others may lump all cigars in with cigarettes and cannabis and everything else. I consider the product differently, and think it's worthy of a discussion of whether we could do a premium retail cigar shop, very narrow. I think the Blaine definition sounded close. Just for the retail piece, again, separating the lounge thing, that's a whole different thing. And I'm not sure if the business model for this applicant even works without the lounge. Maybe it doesn't, maybe they walk away. But I think the lounge is a much heavier lift. But I just think the premium cigar, narrow retail fits in downtown. I just believe that. Again, thinking that it's different and new. Not new, different for us, so.
But, fair? But then how do you square the buffering conversation?
Oh, right, thank you for bringing that up, if I can, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I think you, again, you treat cigars differently. You'd exempt, if you had to create a class of retail to go in the zoning code, the buffer wouldn't apply. The buffer wouldn't apply to a premium cigar shop.
So, spurious
I mean, we
question.
can do whatever we want. I mean,
Right.
we can exempt them from buffers if we think it's a good fit, you know?
And
That's
so
all.
we could equally consider a cannabis shop downtown with the same, what's the word I want? Without requiring buffering, the buffering conversation.
I think
if we
it's-
thought the idea was good enough.
Yes,
Okay.
I think it's in our power to do so. I wouldn't vote for that. I will distinguish cannabis from cigars. And you can call that inconsistent, that's fine. I'll be inconsistent.
No, I'm trying to see,
Yeah, I appreciate
is there
it.
a space of
Yeah.
something in the middle? Frankly, it's hard for me to imagine that right now, but
Yeah, I appreciate it.
maybe. I'll be quiet, thank you.
Member Gurrola.
Yeah, I wasn't here in August when we passed this zoning, or here as a voting member, I guess. So I appreciate city staff. I had lots of questions regarding this, just because I wasn't here the first time around. So taking time to answer all my questions, because of very thoughtful being new. I also heard from 2 people who were in support of it, mainly seemed to be for the lounge. So I'd be curious if there was still that same support for what you said, like a shop without. Something that I'm kind of wondering though is, okay, the cigars, what about when I was younger, cigarillos, I don't even know if I said that right, were super popular with like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and everybody wanted them. Would that fall under that category? And then somebody down could like sell those or do a lounge down there? I know there's like 2 separate I'm kind of lumping in, but that's one that came to mind. I didn't think till you brought that up, where those fall, because, yep, those, a lot of my friends were into those and thinking about buffering zones and those things. I think for me, the lounge piece, the licensing, there's a lot to get from here to there for that. And just for that piece, I'll throw it to you that if one of our current tobacco shops that got grandfathered in from the previous licensing wanted to do like a cigarillo lounge, could they do that? If we approved like this one, just looking like the lounge piece.
So, Mayor, members of the council, I would echo the comments from Councilmembers Eggberg and Walsh in that the council can set policy and choose if they, excuse me, if they would like to draw this pretty narrowly, or give direction, I should say, to the applicant to draw it more narrowly. So I would, whether or not that's possible, I can't tell you sitting here tonight. But to try to maybe answer the second part of your question then, if the other uses, other property owners in whatever zone the council would allow, should the council choose to allow this in, would be allowed to do the same thing. So, yeah, this is the text amendment would impact zone-wide.
Okay.
Mayor, if I can just add to
Councilmember
the
Walsh.
question, I think the state definition of premium cigar, we could use if we constructed an ordinance or a text change. Premium cigar means any cigar that is hand-constructed as a wrapper that is made entirely from whole tobacco leaf, has a filler and binders made entirely tobacco except for adhesives, and, and a wholesale price no less than $2. So I think that does raise the bar on very narrowly what would, if we wanted to do this, I think it'll eliminate the cigarello or the Swisher Sweets or some of the stuff that comes in a pack of 6 and would probably be machine rolled or machine wrapped. I'm sounding like a cigar expert here. I don't mean to. I'm really not. But
There was a day when I was, long ago in a galaxy far, far away.
if there's a will, there's a way. I don't know that there's a will. That would be the question.
Right. So the state does designate it differently.
Well, this is just a state definition of premium cigar. I found it. I'm not sure exactly what the use of this definition is in state statute. It might be several different places. It's just helpful that someone has already gone to the work of defining a premium cigar, and we could use this. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think something I go back to is sorry, wasn't recognized, but yeah. The recently recognized, again, being new, this is where I keep recently recognized zoning code, and then changing that so soon is a hard. But again, like you said, there's
Right.
lots of, considerations, and I don't know if there is a route to go down to say, okay, just this specific, like you're saying, for the premium cigar and that piece, that would be different than just in general other tobacco.
Right, so it sounds like we're saying possibly narrow down on the retail, but no smoke shop. Is that what I'm hearing? Am I hearing that correctly?
I'd say we don't know, and my inclination, you were looking at me, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Seems to me that our conversation tonight should shift to the what additional information do we need, or what other research might be required, and if we can't come up with it right now, I'm sure staff would receive our inquiries in the next week or so.
Right.
But anyway, that's, my brain is saying, I think we've gotten enough of the contour of the challenges, and perhaps finding maybe a narrow space, maybe.
Would there be enough to say we're all, for the lounge piece, that's
up
not
to
a
you, and
path?
we're not here to make a decision.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead. Ms. Crawford.
Madam Mayor, thinking on my feet, so staff, please step in if I'm thinking incorrectly, that it may be, I believe it'd be very helpful to know if there are certain things that are no, because you're doing a first reading based on an application that's come through, not something that staff has proposed. And so if there's an absolute no, or maybe that is good feedback for the applicant to hear, then they need to go back and evaluate, does that fit their business model? Do they, and if not, we don't have an application anymore, they may withdraw. So just thinking, it would be beneficial for staff and the applicant to provide as much feedback as possible. And if they're, they may need time to think about it, I don't know. I'm just.
Sorry. Yeah, if I could add too, I think that's a great point. Mayor and members of the council, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but what I'm hearing are that the two requests that are in front of the council from the applicant, which are in an application and subject to all the 60-day rules, and it's a little different, as City Manager Crawford points out, it's different than, we're noodling a staff recommendation and trying to kind of come up with what's the best policy here. What we're actually doing is deciding whether we're going to approve or deny an application for a text amendment, and we have to do it within a certain period of time, or the implication is that it gets automatically approved if we don't do it within those timelines. Now, I'm hearing, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that there's really no appetite from the council to say yes to the two things that are being proposed, and that's to allow tobacco product shops in the downtown, this is the broad category, tobacco product shops in the downtown, as a conditional use, or two, add this premium cigar lounge, which has its own definition that the applicant has proposed, which is different from Blaine, different from the other ones we've talked about, and is more of a lounge rather than a retail shop. And if that's the case, I think staff is already planning to bring a resolution denying that back to the next meeting, just because we need to do that, and that's important, and that's consistent with everything that we've at least heard from staff and or the Planning Commission. I do like the idea, though, of still having staff take feedback, go back to the applicant and talk about whether they might want to withdraw, or whether they might want to withdraw and submit a new application for something that might be more in line with what they're hearing tonight from the council. But it's really important not to lose sight of the fact that we do have to dispose of this application in some way, shape, or form, whether by approval, denial, or something in the middle. But that's something in the middle isn't always easy to get to when you're working within the confines of the 60-day rule and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
And Mayor, members of the council, I would just add, based on the recommendations from staff and from the Planning Commission, the intent from staff is to bring forward a resolution for denial. So if the council had different direction, it would be helpful to hear that tonight.
Any more direction?
Well, I think
Right.
as presented,
Right.
it's a no.
It's a no, as presented. Do we want to hear from the applicant at all?
Sure.
Yes.
Up to you.
Don't we do a second, don't we do a hearing at second?
There's
So if the applicant,
Recommended denial.
the applicant can come forward. Hi.
Hi, Madam Mayor and members of the council.
Hi.
Settled, I can bring up slides if you choose to.
Yeah, I would love the slides.
I'm Brian Schmidt-Dale. I'm one of the co-founders of Founder Cigar Company.
Does anybody need a restroom break before we continue? Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I apologize. It doesn't look like the Timberwolves are doing well. So if anyone had the
that's
game
great.
recorded, so
And, they're not doing well.
Not doing well.
Oh, I thought they were doing
So,
well. That is not. And what was your name?
I'm Angelo Ferboni, one of the owners of Founder Cigar Company. Thank you, Jason. Jason did a fantastic job laying out every single one of the hurdles that we've identified through here. The reason I have these two gentlemen up with me tonight is that these are graduates of White Bear Lake High School.
2001.
They are, we'll get the PowerPoint. I can do it. Love
Go to
it.
the,
Love
there
it.
you go.
That's actually me with a full beard and long hair, so that's me right there. This is some of our ownership team, and I know that this has been a long night. I have a lot of slides, but the reason that I told these guys earlier, I was going to breeze through this, but the reason that we're here is because context matters. And showing you who we are and what we're trying to bring to the downtown White Bear Lake area is something I think is important. And the only reason that we're here is because these guys grew up in this community, graduated from this town, and we believe in the downtown, and we believe in White Bear. It's been a destination for decades, and we want to continue that on. So, ownership team, that's us recently at a trade show in New Orleans. These are Nate and Brian, as you can see, graduates of 2001. Goodness gracious, you guys are old. And both members of our United States military. Nate recently retired after over 20 years with the Air Force and Air Force Reserve, and Brian is currently with the Air Force Reserve out of Minneapolis. Our core values, this is important to us. This is how we operate. This is how we do things at our company. This is throughout everything that we do. So community, consistency, American spirit, we define that as doing what's right when it's required of you, generosity, and approachable. Approachable is something that we live by in everything that we do, our sales, our marketing. If you call the number on our website, it rings all three of our phones, so one of us is going to answer that. Community is a big thing. This company started in October of 2020. If you can remember what was going on in 2020. In March of 2020, I started smoking cigars every single Tuesday night with a group of guys. About 6 months later, I realized that my mental health was incredible. I was doing well. I was thriving when the world was shut down. And I was working in the basement of Brian's house. We were consulting at that time, and I said, man, I'm doing really well right now. And I think it's because I'm getting weekly face-to-face interactions with some guys. And you're realizing that for us, that was something incredibly important. We decided, Brian and I, to launch a cigar company as a way to trick people into community. It's cigars, and Councilmember Walsh, you brought up a great point. Cigars are different than cigarettes. They are different than cannabis. They are different than other consumables, and we're going to go over that. Cigars are a community thing. They're around celebrations, weddings, graduations, college graduations, first jobs, babies, all that. It's something that you do together. You bring people together through them. And when Brian and I looked at this, we saw that during COVID, mental health was through the floor, suicide, depression, all that in the civilian world. And if you know the statistics in veteran suicide, these guys have seen it in their unit, unfortunately. Veteran suicides are just an absolute abomination. And so we look at that as being something that, for us, if I can trick you into spending quality time with someone, that is a win for us. So that's why we exist. We exist to be a catalyst for community. Our niche is approachable cigar experiences, and our opportunities, we want to provide a clean, safe gathering space around the idea of cigars. Oh, another thing that we do is we do things different. These are a couple of the charities that we've worked with. We have a whole part of our company that is corporate gifting. So, I mean, John Daly the professional golfer, we did cigar boxes for him, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, for Hometown Heroes, for Cigars for Warriors, the local Cigars and Baseball chapter. We've been involved with that since the inception of our company. Jack's Basket. I mean, part of what we do is cigar gifts are cool. Custom cigar boxes are cool. It gets people's attention. It's something that is not normal. And so for us to be able to help charities, we've even hosted parts on our website so people can drive to tobacco compliant sales and storage through a charity aspect. We're doing that for charities. That's just some of our cigar boxes. So this is the building on 3rd Street as we envision it. This is how it used to look. And that part on the right there, you talk about property values, you talk about upkeep, you talk about, are we going to lift up the community? Well, that's what it used to look like. It was a pub. I never frequented said pub, but yeah, these guys are familiar with Houlihan's. It is currently under renovation. So Eli is running this. He's doing a fantastic job. And Eli is investing in this community. He's purchasing and, again, lifting up buildings because he believes in the downtown area, and we really want this to be a staple. Cigars in this community with the yacht club, with the golf course, with Delwood, with the premium level and support, and Brick House, Alchemy, some of these other fixtures of your community. We see this being lockstep with the Brick Houses and the Alchemies, and not the neon sign cigarette stores. Again, if you've been in Brick House, and I hope you have, we want this to feel like a premium experience. You're going to walk in, it's not going to be any neon signs, there's not going to be any cigarettes, there's not going to be any vape or chewing tobacco or anything that 15-year-old kids try to get their hands on. These are premium cigars. And again, you asked a lot of very good questions. The state defines a premium cigar and other tobacco. So there's precedence, and the state defines these and views these as different. Again, just trying to give you an idea. One of the things that I want to address, and I think I got the answer for this already, it's really good hearing you talk about our application, because when we applied for this, we didn't know what this process was going to be like. And my brother-in-law is an attorney, so I understand if I don't ask him the right question, he's not going to give me the answer I was looking for. And so I think that by just hearing you guys talk tonight, we went too broad in our application. And we completely agree. We don't want tobacco downtown. That's not what we want. We don't want to say, hey, White Bear Lake, you should open up every corner to tobacco in your downtown area. That's not what we want. And even when we use the language lounge, again, we're in this industry. We eat, breathe, sleep this industry. That cigar retail and lounge are interchangeable to us. And so, but again, if we're not applying for the right thing, or if we're not defining something as you guys would define that, we want to know that. Another point on that too, with the Minnesota Clean Air Act, and we're going to get into that, I think the reason that, and we've talked with the planning and zoning, there's precedence in the state. We're not asking for something that hasn't been done before. There's also precedence for 24-hour private lounges that allow smoking. There's 3 of them I can think of. One just opened up in Plymouth. There's one in Loring Park in Minneapolis. It's a 24/7 access, member-only exclusive area that allows for smoking. There's another one. It's essentially a private co-working space that also allows smoking. All 3 of those are compliant with the Minnesota Clean Air Act under definition. And I think what we were trying to set up is that if White Bear Lake, based on your definitions, had issue with the sampling or the smoking aspect of it, we were proposing that there is precedence for a members-only smoking area. So again, we're trying to understand what your goals are and also using the precedence of the state, find out what's the best fit. Whether that's, as the city attorney defined it, a premium cigar retail space that allows for sampling, and that the sampling is the upstairs room, or if it is a members-only private area that allows for smoking as well. We want to show that we're coming into this open-handed, trying to find the best way for this to be a win-win for both you and what we're trying to accomplish. This is, before I go to this, that's a really important screen. The one thing that why we think that this meets your definition of the downtown use is that the downtown use doesn't permit adult-only spaces. You permit, when we think about this, the way that it's defined currently in White Bear Lake is you lump it in with cannabis, you lump it in with hookah, cigarettes, all that. There is a legal definition for premium tobacco. There's also just a functional difference in tobacco, cannabis, hookah, all those other things. You allow for alchemy, you allow for establishments that in your definitions you allow for micro distilleries, breweries, that. We view this use as the same as we would a microbrewery, where you have a tap room with sampling, which allows for consumption on property. That's how we'd ask the council to view this use. This is the big one. So cigarettes versus cigars. On the left here, you can see your classic cigarette, and you can see everything that goes into that cigarette: acetone, cyanhydric acid, naphthalene, ammoniac, urethane, toluene, arsenic, all the things that I can't pronounce. That's mass-produced, machine-rolled, machine-made. Chemicals, additives, all this. A major misconception of cigars is that a cigar is just a big cigarette. No, it's not. You can see on the right, there is one ingredient in tobacco, in a premium cigar. It's sun-grown natural tobacco leaves. It takes about 300 hands touch that cigar by the time it is rolled and gets out to the consumer. It's a hand-grown product. It's harvested by hand. It's rolled by hand. It's dried by hand. It's filtered by hand. It's separated by hand. It's color matched by hand. The bands are applied by hand. It is, and I've been in these factories. They're incredible, and that is all that's in that. It's not. It's the other major thing. You don't inhale a cigar. Cigarettes, marijuana, hookah, you inhale those. This is, you don't inhale it. It's for the experience. It's for the taste. It's for the flavor. So those are what I would like to draw your attention to as the major differences between what we're proposing and the general definition that's been laid out. So again, we went over the Minnesota tax code. The Minnesota tax code, so this is from the tobacco tax. Premium cigars and tobacco are taxed differently. Cigarette, snuff, non-premium tobacco, so we talked about the Swisher Sweets. Those are in just the general tobacco. That's taxed at 95% in this state. Premium cigars are hand-constructed cigar, wrapper made from entirely whole leaf tobacco, and a filler and binder made entirely of tobacco. That's the legal definition. That's the tobacco tax definition. With a wholesale price over $2, 95% of wholesale sales price, or 50 cents per cigar. So every single cigar that we receive into our humidor in Blaine, we're currently officed out of Blaine, we pay 50 cents a cigar because every single one of our cigars meets that definition of premium cigar. The Minnesota Clean Air Act, and this is where I want to just draw the attention to the definition. I know every single smoking lounge, and again, I apologize, smoking lounge is part of my vocabulary, that's what I use, but tobacco retail store that allows for sampling, there are many of them. There's probably over a dozen of them in the state. Again, we're not asking for something that hasn't been done before. Every single owner of those establishments that I talk to say, we comply with the Minnesota Clean Air Act as written, and we don't try to further define or restrict what is written. So based off of what the state has written, based off what the state has defined, every single tobacco retail store that allows for sampling, including the ones in Maple Grove, Blaine, Inver Grove Heights, Eden Prairie, Stillwater, Ramsey, they all comply with the Minnesota Clean Air Act. One thing that I will say, the way that you have defined it, sampling based off free samples, your definition is actually federally illegal. So the FDA prohibits tobacco manufacturers and tobacco stores to hand out free cigars. So the definition that you have further defined, the Minnesota Clean Air Act, is illegal based off the FDA restrictions on sampling. The thing too is the tobacco stores are 90% revenue by premium tobacco. Again, we're complying with the statute as written, and we're just asking the city to interpret the statute as written, not as, I don't know what word I'm looking for, I've been sitting in this room a long time, but not as what we feel like it should be. I have 9 pages prepared for things. I also eat, breathe, sleep, this every single day. I welcome the discussions. They've been great, and would love to provide any clarity that I might be able to provide.
Council. Oh.
Yes, and we do want to modify our application. And it sounds like I have to withdraw, or I assume there's no way for us to modify the current application?
Who has that answer?
It totally depends. This was noticed for a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, which is statutorily required. You have a little leeway to change, the way an ordinance is written after it goes to a public hearing, but you really have to have a bona fide public hearing so that people that care about what you might want to put in the ordinance know what we want to put in it. So it depends on the extent of the changes. So I'm not sure if I can answer that question.
And the other reason I ask is because we've worked with the Minnesota State Tobacco Department. The way that they define and pay the tobacco tax, I went and I testified in front of the House committee. It went through committee. There's a bill in process right now for tobacco tax because we're helping. The way that they currently define the tobacco tax is they treat it more like a consumable that goes bad, where we want it to be treated like wine. Cigars like wine, it's better with age. And so the way we went in front of both sides of the House, both sides of the committee, and there was zero opposition. We're helping them rewrite the statute that more helps small businesses. If I receive 20,000 cigars, I have to write a check to the state of Minnesota, and those cigars will sit in my humidor for 3 years based off design. So the reason I asked that question is we would love to help you define this properly because we understand this, and even some of the things that you guys have said about the narrow definition, well, it exists. The state defines these. We would want to offer to help you guys achieve that definition.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? No? Bill? No? Seeing none? Yes?
Just quickly, sidebar, I have 2 things for council.
Okay.
One is if you want to go past 10:30, you need to vote to do that. But then it seems like the cleanest path for you would be to withdraw, reevaluate all of this, and reapply.
Okay.
City Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and again, that probably depends on what you're looking for out of the ordinance. Because, candidly, just based on what I heard you just say, based on what I read in the materials in your application, I'm not sure if I have any idea what you want to do. And more importantly, I don't know, you talked a lot about what you do and definitions and the difference between cigars and tobacco, and that might all be great, but I also don't know if I heard a lot of support from the council for some, maybe none. I couldn't tell. So I think, you've gotten a lot of feedback tonight, hopefully from the council, which should help you. But most importantly, just with respect to your current application, if that's not the application that you want the council to act on, you might want to withdraw it and come up with something that is more consistent with what works for you and maybe with what you've heard tonight. I just don't know what that is.
And it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth either, but when you talk to Blaine and Maple Grove and the way that they've defined tobacco retail that allows for sampling, is it your opinion that interpretation is consistent with the Minnesota Clean Air Act?
I don't want to give you a legal opinion on their ordinances. I haven't talked to them. All I did was I pulled up the definition of what they have in their code. And wanted to draw distinctions from what was in your application compared to what you were at least, or folks were using as examples of how we could get there, because they seem to be very different.
Yeah.
I don't think anything in Blaine, what I would say is I don't think anything in Blaine's definition runs afoul of the Clean Indoor Air Act, because what they allow is a certain use that complies with the Clean Indoor Air Act.
They're defining with the definition.
And ultimately, the city council doesn't decide what might violate the Clean Indoor Air Act or not. That's not its job. The city staff doesn't do that. But I think staff asked a really good question to me when looking at your application, because what you're asking the council to do is make a policy decision, what's right for our community. And I think tangential to that, maybe not the main thing, but it's important for the council to know when we're considering policy decisions, is what they want to do consistent with the law.
Right.
And that's why they asked me to answer that question.
Yeah, and I think to give context on part of that application was using the precedence of the 3 private lounges, or private membership-only establishments that allow for smoking, that are also compliant with the Minnesota Clean Air Act. So we look at that as, with the 2 separate entities of, based on the definition that Maple Grove uses and Blaine uses, it's a tobacco retail store that allows for sampling. We're fine using that definition, with the upstairs being the place for sampling. Just bringing the attention that there is, again, we're not trying to do something that hasn't been done before. I can think of 3 private establishments that allow for 24/7 access and a smoking environment. Then there are a dozen plus locations in the state that are allowing sampling, as Councilmember Walsh saw in Maple Grove.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond regarding the upstairs. And we are talking about zoning tonight, but Director Lindahl did talk about the licensing, which comes out of my office. And as you're proposing, that upstairs doesn't comply with a tobacco license. So that's another hurdle that you will have to, which I think Councilmember Edberg talked about. So there are several hurdles to meet, and I'm not positive that you heard feedback that is supportive of that upstairs lounge as presented.
Okay.
Councilmember Grohl.
Yeah, I just had a question. Appreciate you sharing. Appreciate you sharing that you're veteran, don't too, even though my spouse is a Marine, so I don't know if I can get behind the Air Force. I'm joking, completely joking. If you understand. But I really appreciate that. And I understand the importance of having those spaces to gather. It does, coming together, right, for those. I believe, too, that can save lives. In what City Manager Crawford referenced, getting there with the licensing, even though I understand that piece and importance, would be a lot of hurdles. So I can't speak to everybody, and I understand that's not necessarily what we're talking, but I also don't want to, waste your time. That could I get there for that piece? No, while you're speaking in my head, I was thinking, okay, could there be a place, if based on the definition, like you said, the premium cigars, they can buy them, and I don't know if the VFW has space for those things, or, whatever spots, but I could probably look at, okay, just being the retail, maybe with the zoning in that piece, but for the licensing, I think when you presented, it was like 5 licensing things we'd have to look at based on the seating, the lounge. It would just be a lot for me to get there, even though in my heart, I understand that piece of gathering, and I don't know if you'd have any interest in it without that, I guess is kind of what I'm wondering.
Right. So that's what needs to be decided. And, we may have to make decisions for the future of this, for the business, and not only for you, but it would run with the land as well. So we have to really consider that. So
Yeah, and I appreciate the feedback on that too, and completely understand where you're coming from, where we have to understand what the ripple effect is going to be with policy.
Right.
Mom was a state senator, get how you have to not only look at today, but also what's going to happen down the road.
Right.
The one thing that I would ask is the definition that you have for sampling. Is that consistent with federal law? And also the items that you have in there, is that based off of bad experiences you've had with locations that can do this, or, and that's also where I look at, okay, if it has to be two separate entities, one where is retail, one is private establishment, does that strengthen the case to try to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, a safe gathering space for people to do this, adults, consenting adults to do that, or based off of the definition of a tobacco retail with sampling, as the Minnesota Clean Air Act, as Maple Grove and Blaine have laid it out, would that allow for the area above? So I guess I'm looking at it as a crossroads on the application.
Did you want to say something?
Mayor, members of the council, I would just add one procedural note I just want to emphasize that came up during Planning Commission, in that the city does have a policy that says if you're apply for any sort of land use application, doesn't have to be a text amendment, any land use application, and your application is denied, you can't reapply for substantially the same thing for a calendar year. Or for a year, I should say. So that's just one more item for the applicant to consider if they think that the council is moving towards a denial,
Right.
And they plan to modify their application.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Edberg, you had a question?
So I was going to the procedural conversation. I want to give you the opportunity to put your best foot forward. If it works, fine, and if it doesn't, well, that's where the chips fall. So I'm curious about, I don't know how to think. You're asking me to stretch a whole lot of stuff.
Appreciate that.
And I'm not ready to tell you what I think tonight. And so whether it is in your interest to not withdraw, okay, the purpose of withdrawing is to give another option. But if you don't know what the option is that might work, then we've kind of defeated that purpose. And so I'm trying to figure out what is the process that is available to you and to us to allow us to think, to tell you what you think, and then, if it's not going to work, withdraw so that you could offer a different alternative that might work. I don't know. It's like that. This is the which domino falls first, and I don't know what the answer to that is. What's our practice and process for doing that?
They would submit, Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, they would submit in writing to Mr. Lindahl that they're withdrawing, or if not, then this will be brought back to the May 26th meeting with a resolution for denial.
Yeah, and I believe.
And if it is denied, then they would not be able to apply for substantially the same thing for 12 months.
And I would add too, I mean, a lot of applicants withdraw for other reasons. They see the writing on the wall and they don't want something out in the public forum that effectively makes findings about why this is a bad idea for a specific community. And they also might not want to have staff go through the exercise of a bunch of paperwork just to put together things that we know are going to happen. Now, they don't have to withdraw. Of course, that's not required. We're not telling them they have to do that. It's just, it's part of the decision-making process. And so,
and I'm going to interrupt for a second because we have to vote.
Madam Mayor, I move we allow ourselves to meet past 10:30.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, any discussion?
How long past 10:30?
I can be brief.
I don't know that I need
coming
to,
up as
I don't think we need
well,
to
so
set
it's
a
like-
time on that. We're just, is it suspension of our rule or whatever the right terminology is?
Do you want to limit it to, give us 30 minutes to 11?
I wouldn't put a time on it. It's just beyond 10:30. I don't want to be here that long. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Right, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, noted. All right.
And you bring up an excellent point, and that's where I feel torn right now. because I feel like there are two ways that I could present this. One would be based off the definition as presented in Blaine and Maple Grove, which allow for sampling. And if you have frequented or even seen those establishments, sampling is pretty broad, even based off the definition from the Minnesota Clean Air Act. So that's one thing that we could submit with the intention that we would allow sampling in the facility as defined and allowed by the Minnesota Clean Air Act. The other one would be essentially we would submit an application for two uses. One would be the retail facility, as Councilmember Walsh said, having that as, you know, because when we met with planning and zoning, we said, hey, we're not presenting another olive oil or knick-knack or, you know, charcuterie store, which, don't get me wrong, those are fantastic. But one of the things that we feel like is missing is an application like this. And so that's where Councilmember Egbert brought up. I feel torn because I feel like there's two ways that I can propose this that have clear precedence in the state of Minnesota as applicable and compliant with the Minnesota Clean Air Act. I love open forum discussion, so I do have a way that we can sit down for roughly an hour, hour and 15 minutes, maybe in a fire, and discuss this further if anyone wants to take us up on that. But
I just want to add to, I mean, I appreciate the good discussion about the Clean Indoor Air Act and whether this is okay and where sampling, what that means, what's allowed. It's also worth just reminding the council, the applicant, anyone watching that, you know, there's also a more important question here. Is this an appropriate land use for the city? I mean, this is a zoning question. This is a policy question based on, is it appropriate for a specific district in downtown? Now, whether it's legal or not legal, whether there's 5 of them, 500 of them around the state, that's irrelevant when it comes to, is this an appropriate land use in that area? And I don't want to lose sight of that, but I think you've gotten a lot of good feedback tonight. And you can decide what you want to do with that feedback, and you have options.
Right.
Right. So I think it's something that you have to go back and kind of decide. Okay?
Valid.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, are we, anything else? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. All right. We are at item 9A. 9A, concept plan review of 1900 Weber Serenity Senior Care Center street parking lot expansion. Mr. Lindahl.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the City Council, the item before you is under the discussion portion of your agenda, and it is a concept plan proposal, as you mentioned, to expand the parking lot for the Serenity Senior Care Facility at 1900 Weber Street. The reason that we're seeing a concept plan proposal tonight is in order to grant their request, the city would have to approve an amendment to the plan unit development approval for this site. And the city's zoning standards say that if you're amending plan unit development, it's the same process of whether you were starting new, and it requires you to go through the concept plan approval process. So I'll try to be very succinct and focused in the information that I give you. So again, it's R3 zoning, which is traditional residential. This institutional use is allowed in that district, subject to, in the new code, what are called civic building standards, which creates design and layout standards for parking lots in addition to that building type. Guided by the comprehensive plan as a public or semi-public use, and the PUD permitted the original use. This again is a lot of background about originally constructed in 1956. In 2012, the PUD was established to approve some renovations that happened on the property. Serenity, since that time period, purchased 2 of the adjacent properties to the northwest. and has made them part of their property, and that's we're proposing to add the parking in this case. And again, PUD is necessary to approve that request. When you look at PUD applications overall, they are allowed, they are intended to allow flexibility for development standards in return for a higher quality development in general. In the 2012 review of this, it was deemed that the senior care facility was a critical use for an aging population and applicable to White Bear Lake. This is an overhead that shows the existing conditions. I think most people are probably fairly familiar with this site. The existing parking lot is in the middle of the block on the north side, adjacent to Weber Drive, I believe. It contains 105 parking stalls and has a 0-foot setback to the right-of-way side on Weber. While if you're standing out there today, you would still see some what's commonly referred to as boulevard area, but that's all public right-of-way. There is no private land between the beginning of the end of their parking lot and the city's public right-of-way. So this shows an overview of what they're proposing to do, and again, expand the parking lot to the west. It's 45 stalls total, but with some reconfiguration, it's a net gain of 35. From the 105 to 35 additional stalls. It includes 3 new parking lot islands. The deviations that would be addressed during the plan unit development is continuation of that 0-foot setback to the west along Weber is probably the most notable thing. There is a standard also in the code that says you need parking lot islands every 10 stalls. They have one portion of their design that has 13 stalls without a parking lot island. And then they have one parking lot island that is 7 feet wide as opposed to that minimum requirement being 8 feet. As part of the concept plan review process, you probably remember they were required to hold a public hearing. That did occur on that site, or in the chapel of that site. Notice was sent to the surrounding area. 4 people attended. Residents those 4 had questions about on-street parking, construction timeline and practices, lighting and property maintenance. At the Planning Commission review, they were generally supportive of this concept to the applicant. And one of the neighbors, Andrew Enright, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, did come and tell the Planning Commission that he had concerns about just the construction noise and activity that could occur in his neighborhood throughout that process. The review process, again, concept plan, had a neighborhood meeting, Planning Commission last month, and then a city council tonight. The applicant realizes that they haven't completed every step in the concept plan process, but already has applied for the PUD amendment moving forward. Because of the Memorial Day holiday, the Planning Commission meeting is moved up in May, so that occurs on the 18th, so a week from tonight. And so they have applied for that PUD amendment and would be on the Planning Commission meeting on the 18th, and then back to City Council because this is technically an ordinance amendment, so it would have to have 2 readings, the 28th and July 9th, moving forward. Sorry, the 26th, I'm sorry, thank you for the correction. And so with that, again, you can provide comments back from the applicant. I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposal or the public, neighborhood meeting or planning commission meeting. And so that would take comment.
Does anybody have any comments? I want to thank the applicant for, you win the prize.
Sounds like you missed a bad basketball.
So if you want to come on up.
This is a hockey state anyway, who cares?
Does anyone have any questions?
The Timberwolves.
My name's Jim Johnson. I'm with Pope Design Group. We are the architects working on the project. Ariel is the executive director back there. She's going to provide some additional information too as well. So thank you for looking into this project. We are really trying to add additional parking to the facility. As you know, the staff increases, we want to get parking off the streets, get people in the parking lot where they belong, provide some nice landscaping for that parking lot. We added some additional islands that were not required, but we put them in there just to get some more green space in there. I know we need to add one more down in that where it's got 13 stalls. We'll take care of that. So I think it's, and once again, the PUD amendment is to continue that zero lot line along Weber Street, which is, provides a more continuous parking circulation in the parking lot and not creating confusion. So I think that's sort of the basis of the project. And if you have any questions?
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How much on-street parking currently is used, and how much of that might be reduced through the addition of this space?
I wonder if Ariel, yeah, can you?
I don't know a specific number. Hi, I'm Ariel. I'm our executive director. Especially on Weber Street, we have quite a bit happening back into those couple blocks off the side streets. I know that's something that's come up quite a bit with our neighbors of making sure that then we are communicating to our staff that we get those staff into the lot once we expand.
And once you move staff into what do you do with the visitors of residents? Okay, what I'm looking at, yes, the parking on Weber has been an issue in that community, in that neighborhood for a decade or more, all 16 years that I've been on. And I can appreciate that you have control over where staff park, and to get them off the street would be welcome. But if those spaces are simply going to be refilled with other guests and visitors, it doesn't quite solve that problem.
I guess.
Am I imagining that, or what? How do you think about that?
I guess, tell me if I'm answering this right, but our understanding, or what we're planning with this, is that we're having, I know I had mentioned staff, but that we're having all individuals redirected into the parking lot.
All vehicles? Guests and staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Gurula.
Yeah, I had a similar parking question. My son used to do music together classes at Serenity back in the day, and we were always able to park in that northeast lot, and there always seemed to be parking there, and then parking on the opposite side on this street. And then I obviously drive by there, but I've been more intentional this week going by there like twice daily with my kids because I live over there. It can be on our route. And I haven't, and that's qualitative again because it's just my own personal, but is that lot underutilized, that other far lot? Because I always see spots available. And again, that's qualitative, but like, is it just people don't want to park there and walk that far or from the distance?
I would say it very much depends on time of day. So I would say, looking out at our parking lot, especially since we've started planning this, I've been more attentive to what times of day is it. It's 100% shift change, so that kind of 2 to 3 p.m. time frame, it is over flooded because we've got the new shift coming on, the shift coming off on all areas of the campus. There's a couple other shift change times that aren't not as many staff members, but I would say generally what I see is between 10 and probably 4 p.m. is when we're seeing the most overflow parking. We do have that small parking lot on 2nd Ave that does stay fairly full as well, just because that's a lot of our assisted living traffic, because that has a designated separate entrance.
Councilmember Walsh.
Well, thanks. This is in Ward 1. I've had, not that many, but some concerns about parking on Weber, and this is great. More spots. More spots. It's a great neighbor, great facility. So that's the feedback you're looking for, 100%.
Okay. Anybody else feedback?
I have one more.
Okay. Councilmember Gurula.
In it, so there's that house on the very far end. There's like kind of a line of trees there for that house. Is that house occupied?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I'm wondering, like, will that privacy be maintained? Because when I drove by today, I thought, okay, if that's expanding a parking lot, there's kind of like a nice privacy you have there. And I was wondering if that with construction would be maintained in the plan. It looked like yes in the plans, but I wasn't sure. And then my other piece was just kind of wondering, was it 6 trees that are coming down for the parking lot? And is there any way to save those?
To answer your first question, obviously, we're not going to touch any of the trees that are on that residential lot. And in addition to that, we are adding trees to the parking lot on that side as well as a buffer. And then there's also a stormwater basin that's being built there. So the actual parking lot is 30 feet away roughly from the property line, something like that. So I think the amount of landscaping there will be increased.
What's the total amount of, because those are really mature trees
So you asked
coming
about the
down.
trees to be taken down?
Yes.
Yeah, there are, and I apologize, I think it is 6 trees. Those trees are actually in pretty rough shape if you look at them.
Dashboard, or are they, I'm just wondering if there's a
I'm
way,
not the
if they're
landscapes.
healthy and observant, if there's a way to possibly, they look like they're on the outside, if there's a way to keep some if possible.
Yeah, those, do we have a slide of the landscape? Most of those trees are actually right in the parking area.
What about with those medians? Like if they put those in, could those little islands be with, maintained to the
Those have trees planned.
But
and
like
shrubs.
keeping the mature ones I'm talking
Going
about.
around the mature trees.
The trees that are right next to the building?
They're well, they're like in like
The
kind
ones
of,
that are in that, where those
Yeah.
two houses came down, there's some bigger ones. I would agree, I think they kind of look like they are in rough shape, but I am no tree.
I think most of those are not going to survive. They're coming down. But we're
but are, like,
replacing them.
can we confirm, I'm just wondering if there's any, again, I understand, but if there's a way to keep them in the median, if that's worth exploring, because it's easy for us to say, but we've had this situation before with parking lots where they said, oh, those trees aren't well, and then arborists have said, well, those trees could survive. So that's what I'm kind of getting at. If we could, if you, maybe my direction would be if you could look more into that.
Sure, you can.
Can keep the tree and
Or
surround
if
it
they
with
actually
those
are in health
medians.
decline, like you say, or if they are actually healthy trees. It's hard to tell with trees, especially this time of year sometimes.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll look into that, sure.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do not object to the expansion. It seems to make sense, especially if it alleviates parking on Weber and the surrounding side streets. Adding 35 spaces seems to make sense. That would be my comment.
And it sounds like the neighbors were in agreement that then it will get what was their feedback?
I think the neighbors, the gentleman, the Andrew that was here for the planning commission, they were more concerned with the construction, clogging up streets with construction traffic, noise, that kind of stuff. So that's something we'll address when we get the contractor involved.
So did they seem kind of like they want to get the streets off, the cars off the street and into the parking lot?
I would say so. Some of the questions were exactly the first question that we had was making sure that we're getting them off the streets.
Right, right. Okay. All right, thank you so much, and thanks for waiting, and you guys all get some kind of a special prize. I don't know what it is, though. Thank you so much.
Got a couple of my turn.
All right, item 10, communications from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Again, just the Public Works Open House is next Wednesday. I need to just read the slide, I'm a little too tired. From 5 to 7 p.m. at Public Works facility. And then a reminder for the city council that you have a work session next Tuesday. It's actually a joint work session with the HRA, housing needs assessment update, comprehensive plan discussion, and you'll meet the new police chief. And to that end, our new police chief started 2 days ago. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Excellent. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
So just
We're adjourned.